Well, that's cool.
Right into the mic, pretty clear.
Sure. I can
All
hear
right, so
that.
that was a fun false start. We were getting into it.
Yeah, we were. Just right off the bat. Just diving right in.
All right, how's that sound?
Yeah. Yep, that should work.
About right?
We're good, yeah.
Cool.
So I think we left off the kid or the aborigine.
kid,
Whatever
so-
you prefer. You have the light. There's a light instilled in all of us.
Yeah. Well, that's what this podcast is founded on.
Sure.
There's a hero in everybody, a divine spark that wants to make the right decision.
Yeah.
And a little encouragement of that guy. You don't even have to approach the bad guys.
It can go a long way.
Right.
That's consciousness, in my opinion.
That's my idea too.
Yeah. Which separates us from animals, I think, in many ways.
Seems to be.
Yeah.
It seems to be. Did you hear about the I mean, this is going to be a straight ripoff of another podcast, but the chimp, not a chimp, it was a primate.
Okay.
I forget what breed. Took a motorcycle, rode a motorcycle. This is a primate.
Okay.
Jumps off the motorcycle and goes to steal a baby.
Wow. Doesn't surprise me, though. They are very random creatures. Well, random to us, but in their minds, who knows, you know?
I mean, just to get to the point where you can operate the motorcycle without any coaching.
So, never before was this a 1 down 4 up motorcycle or a 5 up motorcycle?
It's a good question. Did he
just
shift?
An automatic? Yeah. Did he
But
shift?
Other question is like, did he get going? How did he get going? That's my question.
Well, I mean, I'll be honest with you. Let's think about it for a second. So, monkeys in general, or any type of primate in general, have really good balance. All right, substantially far better than ours. In general, I would imagine. Secondly, they're used to like swinging on vines and using their feet like their like hands. So
they're dexterous.
Very much so.
Yes.
So, if they get going 5 or 10 miles an hour, which really all a bicycle or motorcycle really needs to stay up place, as long as they got vision and they can see, oh, where am I going? It's not too far-fetched for me to believe, depending on how they're putting the gas, them using the gas. That is what gets
I like how you've got the four-wheeler throttle going rather than the twist grip.
Yep, you're right.
Yeah, it just goes to show that you're more in the...
Yeah. That's true. That's true. I didn't think about that.
So...
But, yeah.
We'll get back to the divine spark thing that we were talking about before we started, but it's really good to see you, buddy.
Yeah, man, it's good to be here. I haven't seen you in years, I don't think.
So
we've talked a little bit, but
we used to do a lot of work together. We were at the same place together, repair facility back then.
Yep.
And since then, like I've moved into other things, and you're doing. Man, you're killing it. When I knew you, you were like a tire guy, and now you're a store manager.
Yep, I was a sales associate.
Yeah, rocking and rolling, man. Moving up the ladder, doing a great job.
Trying to, man. That's what a good wife will do that for you.
Yeah. How long you been married?
So we have been married. Actually, next month will be 8 years.
Okay, and how long you been together?
Crazy. 9.
Okay,
I believe 9 years. So
very healthy.
Very healthy.
Overlap there.
Yeah.
I like that.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. 2 years,
Yeah.
I never thought I would be the one to get married, man. But I never thought I'd like kids either. It turns out I love kids.
Cool.
So.
And you've got now?
I got 3.
3 kids.
3 kids.
Yeah. And you just had the third.
We just had the third one. Yep. 3. He was 3 weeks old last Thursday. So this Thursday will obviously be 4 weeks old. Yep.
That's so cool.
He's gonna be a redhead too, just like you, Chase.
What?
Yep.
He's got red
hair.
I don't have anything on my head anymore. Is the problem. Oh man, I am enjoying rocking the Corona quarantine beard right now. Like, so this is gonna be great because the last episode I shot was in January.
Yeah.
And it's it's not January anymore. And the work from home has kicked in and all this other stuff. I was like, you know what? I don't have to be seen at a corporate environment for a while.
That's true.
Let's see how far it goes.
I'm used to seeing you with a beard anyway, I think. I think you had a beard when we worked together.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, you usually I keep it pretty well trimmed like you've got. Good professional look.
Yep.
Not saying that this isn't for the hipsters out there that are already offended.
I think it looks straight.
But you can't wear a hat because you got a man bun anyway.
Right. That is true. That is technically true.
So, but yeah, I'm enjoying it. But yeah, so this is all the red I've got left. I let my hair grow out a while back.
Really? How did that happen?
It's a lot of gray.
It's gray.
Apparently.
Nice.
It's not like pretty silver. No, it's like dull gray and
you got to use special hair product.
I was like, yeah, I let it go really long. Like longer than I had let.
When did this happen?
By really long, I mean like
1.5 inches, 2.
Yeah, 2 inches.
When did this happen?
I just recently cut it. like a week or two ago.
Oh wow!
So I need to buzz it again because it's short.
That's crazy, man.
So it's like and I've got gray coming in the beard.
I never thought about doing that, man.
It's fun.
I think I should try to do it. Well, I have to wear a hat if I did that, but
yeah, I still argue like if you have hair as a guy,
grow it.
Rock that stuff while you got it, because it's gonna go away, and if it doesn't go away, you get to be that silver fox and just kill it. So if you got hair, grow it.
You can do the Hulk Hogan thing. At least,
I don't. I have hair down to like my forehead.
Yeah.
But it's so thin.
Yeah.
And it's so blonde still up there that you can't see it. You can't see it until it's back here. Yeah,
you got the baby hair. I got some baby hair too.
Do you?
Yep.
Nice.
I'm getting there too, my friend.
Old age. Well, we're both mid-30s. So,
we are. Yeah, we're very close in age.
Yeah.
Yep.
So you got married for 8 years, been with the same gal for 9.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
3 kids.
Yep.
A 3.5-week-old.
Yep. Life's good though, man.
Yeah.
You know, outside of
moving up. And
I still have my
ranks.
job. I'm technically an essential employee.
You've always been essential, Rob.
Well, thank you, Chase. I appreciate that.
No, I appreciate you doing the work, though, seriously, because you're in a retail environment. You're coming in contact with a lot of people.
It's fun.
And with their vehicles, right? So you're...
Yes.
You know, they don't... There's no sanitizing somebody's car real quick before you pull it in for whatever work they're going to have done.
That's what gets me, man.
What's that like?
So, check it out, man. So, I will be at work, and almost every day or every other day, I'm in a meeting with my managers in my district, and I'm having my district manager along with his boss, the regional manager, excuse me, explaining to us new and exciting rules on how to try to tame the pandemic in our particular stores. But it has so many hypocritical things in each thing that they want us to do. It's almost nonsense. So, for instance, now if
don't get yourself in trouble now.
I'll
this
try
is
my
an
best.
uncut
They
show.
don't. I haven't exposed where I work yet, so no one knows where I work. Okay, so I'm not putting you on blast either. If for some reason someone in my high ups is watching, I didn't name you.
You're still working to understand the theory and the logic behind it.
Correct.
The communication could be better.
Hey, I've told my district manager how I feel about it.
The coherence of the instructions.
Correct.
Which, this is kind of why we're here too, and we'll just touch on it briefly.
Mm-hmm.
The narrative is contradictory in itself if you are willing to look at it from the root. So not the company that you're working for.
Right.
They're just trying to keep up with what's already a contradictory delivery of information, which is weird.
Well, so Chase said they want us to wear masks and gloves, and I'm fine with that. But if you don't wear them, they will they'll immediately fire you.
So they're treating it the same as safety protection in the shop.
Correct.
Yeah.
We have insane amounts of hand sanitizer, all the precautionaries that one would take in order to try to stay as safe as you can in this pandemic. And we do the vice versa for the customers. You know, we don't make customers wear masks or gloves, but we offer them for free up front. If they'd like them, they can have them, but they're not mandated, okay? And ironically enough, the customers, not the employees, are the ones that could be coming in from anywhere, all over the globe, or all over the flat globe. We'll get into that here shortly.
The disc,
yes,
absolutely.
Possible disc. So possibly with that, but to me, I just feel like that's kind of ridiculous, you know, that all these people could be in different states, could possibly have it, but they don't have to wear masks. We don't have to scan them. We also have to scan. I have to scan every single one of my employees in with a thermometer every single time they come in each morning, just to make sure that they're fine. I have to take pictures of these guys with their masks and their gloves every single morning, every single ones, and their employees' numbers. It's a very redundant, very elaborate things that I'm having to do.
It's got to feel a little like micromanaging.
Oh yeah, micromanagement to the extreme. But the best part is again, you know, the customers are the ones that are going to probably potentially have this. And like you just stated briefly ago, the cars are the cesspools where this stuff probably is going to be sitting, whether it be on the steering wheel, which we do provide the steering wheel covers and things like that, but we still have to touch them. You know what I'm saying? Mm-hmm. So to me,
you can't test drive with a steering wheel cover on.
Correct.
It violates a different safety code.
Exactly.
Yeah, so you're exposing your tech every time, who is hopefully wearing gloves.
But they don't see it like that.
If he's wearing greasy gloves,
right?
Now he's stained the wheel, and now you're buying a steering wheel, or a terrible detail.
God only knows what else. Yeah, so there's just a lot of things that contradict each other, and it's obvious that the company is doing the best that they can with what they have, and they're just trying to make money. That's what they're there to do. That's what all companies and businesses are there to do. They're there to make money, and I think another big problem is we have corporate guys that are just sitting in their house right now with not much to do, but they want to still seem viable to the company. So they're sitting there behind their little corporate computer, putting in 30 emails a day, do this, do that, don't forget this, don't forget that. But while we're on the front lines, I don't have time to check every single email. Just I don't want to go on too much about that.
No, I don't want to get you in trouble either. But there is, you do know about the Matthew principle, though, right? The Pareto distribution. In any given creative endeavor, the square root of the total amount of people in that endeavor create 80% of the product. So
okay. Yeah.
It's basically the 80-20 rule.
Yeah.
But it's actually worse than that. So yeah, I've been working in corporate environments for a while.
Yeah.
A few different ones.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, there are some people that you can tell 80% of their job is job justification.
Correct.
And you know what? That's the system we've built.
Yes,
I'm not saying there's anything wrong with what they're trying to do. Maybe they're in a position where they're just not getting
they're trying that
meaningful task.
Yeah, and they're trying to make themselves more viable than they really are.
In some cases, because it's the only way you're going to move up.
Right. Well, it's the only way they're going to keep their jobs too. They want to make it like, well, I'm making, God only knows how much they make, hundreds of thousands a year. So I need to show that I'm at least putting some forth effort, not just sitting at the house so I don't get furloughed.
Yep, absolutely. And one of the suppliers you guys use, all of their outside sales staff got furloughed for at least 2 months.
Yeah. Well, our tire trucks didn't come in for months. I don't think at least 2 months, if I'm not mistaken. So, lots of craziness, man. Lots of craziness.
For sure.
I think it's going to end up eventually getting back to normal. But we don't really know, though, at the same time. This could be a test for something much crazier.
Well, and they keep talking about the new normal. So even if we could go back to normal, the narrative right now is not going to allow for that. No. They're going to push us to have a new normal.
Yeah, and we're getting used to this new normal, too.
Yeah.
That's the scary thing. A lot of people are getting used to it. And, I kind of always figured if something really bad was ever going to happen in the country, which, history tends to repeat itself. But I always thought that it would just happen in a snap of an instant. Everything would go bad, everything would be chaos. But in reality, the people that run the show, I think they're a bit smarter than that. And I think they're extremely strategic. And it makes substantially more amount of sense now what they're doing than it would be just to throw something in a hot pot of coffee in somebody's lap, for instance, versus just nice and easy. Put that frog in a slow boil and let them just turn that water up very, very slowly and just let the frog roast itself. And
I will say, because the idea behind that is the frog doesn't know that it's warming up to the point where it's going to kill him.
Well, eventually, though, the frog actually, what happens is the frog, it exerts too much energy in adjusting its heat and its body level to stay cool, that when it comes too hot where its body cannot substantiate the heat enough, it tries to jump out, and it's too tired to jump out, and
it's a great analogy.
It's too tuckered out.
Yeah. Dave Benson and I were talking about the puppeteers, the puppet masters, and
who are they is the question.
Well, there it is, they. And I think
it's always they.
Pinky and the Brain did it the best. The horde of ecumenical yodelers, THEY.
They, the horde of ecumenical yodelers.
And it's such a great episode.
I like it.
I think Hot Fuzz does a great narrative on that too. If you've seen Hot Fuzz with
Simon Pegg and his brilliant partner, what's his name?
Nick Frost.
Nick Frost. That's what it is.
Those guys are hilarious.
They are funny.
But you've got that group of Druidian looking people.
Yeah.
Turns out it's just the neighborhood town or the town leaders.
Well, there's
a
lot
about
of people.
that greater good, and they're killing people to keep their town looking good. And it's it's all justified. It's all about the greater good. It's
But there's a lot of truth to that where people don't even see it. And I think in a lot of our Hollywood movies, and a lot of social media, there's a lot of things that are kind of in plain sight that we are seeing that may be subliminal and may just kind of keep us in a certain environment, if you will, mentally, but that just keeps us going in the same direction. Just a constant circle of, not normalness, even though we think it's normal, if that makes sense.
Well, I'm noticing things are getting bolder.
Way more bold.
Yes. It's like
over the past 15 years, even 10 years, things are like dramatically changing.
Right. They'll say, yeah, we did that. And just throw it out there. And be like,
no one
what?
Cares.
This is normal.
Yeah.
And I think they're testing the water to see how much they can get away with before we start caring.
Well,
in a lot of ways.
Not to jump into too many different subjects at once, but, you know, when we were vaguely talking about this, so, for instance, you're talking about testing the water. So, you know, even 20 years ago, if you would have talked about a parent, and, you know, this is going to be controversial here, so just bear with me. But if you would have talked about a parent letting his 5 or 6-year-old boy turn into a girl, or their 5 or 6-year-old girl turn into a boy, vice versa, people would think you are insane and probably try to have you mentally committed. Nowadays, though, it seems that, you know, that's okay.
As a matter of fact, it's the reverse in a lot of cases. If you're not willing to let your 5-year-old,
then you're some type of bigot or you know, xenophobe or something. And it's scary to me that we're allowing children to make full-fledged decisions for themselves that are going to ultimately change their lives forever, and probably not in a good way. You know, I'm not saying that that's not, you know, everybody's different, you know, when they're adults and they feel like they need to do something to make themselves feel happy or feel complete, I'm all for that. But when you're dealing with children, they need to just you should be as transparent with them as possible towards that type of stuff. You want to kind of protect them and hide them from any kind of serious decision making, like, hey, you know, I mean, that's a decision as along the lines of, hey, do you tell your 5-year-old about sex? You know,
right? Do
you tell your 5-year-old about the crackheads around the corner?
And there are people that do that.
Yeah, and there are, and you know that even that though is still not as bad as, in my opinion, okay, as letting your 5 or 6-year-old, or God forbid, you pushing your 5 or 6-year-old into a sex operation or hormonal dependency changes, things like that, or hormonal, I'm trying to think what they're called.
Hormone therapy.
Hormone therapy. I mean, to me, that's just very scary.
Well, I mean,
very frightening.
Well, sure. And to give an idea, coming back to what you were bringing up, is the gradients across 15, 20 years. I remember as a kid, late 80s, early 90s, hearing about parents letting their kid get a tattoo.
Sure. Yeah.
It's a very permanent change to the body. Like, you know, I grew up in a semi-conservative family where getting your ears pierced before a certain age is a
huge no-no.
Well, it's a huge no-no, and then the reasons are, look, it's pretty permanent.
It's sacred too, you know. You
don't know what you're doing yet.
Innocent body as well, you know. That's how, you know, Christian families a lot of times will see that. Well, and there's a lot of truth in that too.
Well, and at the very least, you know, we can talk about tattoos and stuff like you're saying when you're an adult.
Right.
The argument, I think, on the flip side is you're imprisoning that person to live in a gender that isn't theirs for 15 years.
Correct.
And if you think of it as a prison like that, it is horrifically torturesome in the mind of somebody who's saying, why would you ever make somebody be what they're not?
And see, now, there's a flip side to that, though.
But do we know who they are yet?
Right.
Do they know who they are yet?
Right.
Who knows who they are at 5 years old?
Let them be them for sure. What I'm saying is if a 5 or 6-year-old boy looks at girl clothes or looks at something pink, looks at something feminine in any way, shape, or form that our society thinks is feminine, we immediately just push them. Oh, he thinks he's a girl. We're going to have to do hormone therapy and everything else. Versus, okay, well, let's see where this goes. And you can be open. I mean, I don't think it's bad if you let your boy play with Barbie dolls necessarily. I mean, you know, I always thought it was interesting when I was a kid. I thought Barbies were interesting, and then I'd have the Ken dolls, or not the Ken dolls, like my army dolls, like with the
G.I. Joes,
the guns and stuff, and they would kill the Barbies, and then the Barbies would come back to life and kill them. So
zombie Barbies, I love this idea. Can we shoot
that
movie?
Yeah, we need to shoot
I know a guy
movie.
that does stop motion. We could do it.
Yes, there you go. But I mean, kids are crazy, man. You know, kids don't know what they want. Kids, you know, it takes years.
Let them make decisions. Heck, I will do this. You ready? On camera. Global, well, discal, global. it's still up for debate. Internet media. You want your kid wants to cross dress? Go for it. Go for it. It's temporary. It's temporary. They're not making any permanent changes
Correct.
to their body.
Yeah.
I don't see a problem.
I don't either, actually, with that. Yeah.
And then there's another element, too, and this is where I've been deeply concerned. Native American cultures and other warrior cultures across time would teach you to be the most intense warrior.
Right.
But then they'd also make you learn to dance and learn to sew.
Right.
They knew about the balance.
Right.
You can't have power without understanding restraint and fragility.
Yep. You have to have a good fiscal balance with everything.
Yeah.
Yep.
And we messed up. I think we can lay this at the feet of a scarred generation that came out of World War II.
Yeah.
Which is built on...
couple of different generations, probably, man.
Well, so it trickles down, right? So this
Butterfly
is just my...
effect, yeah.
Yeah, it's kind of my flip-flop theory. So Greatest Generation comes out. They survive World War II. In order to do that, you can't question leadership. You ain't got time.
Yeah.
People are dying.
Right.
It's an intense, high-stress situation where you don't have time to question the captain.
Right.
They brought it home.
Nobody talked about it back then,
Nobody talked about what it's like to be a dad.
So there was a lot more probably violence in the home that was never seen.
There's
a lot
that,
more
yeah.
verbal abuse that was probably never seen.
Because it was normal language for the guys that were coming home, right?
Yeah.
And guys and gals, because there were women that were over there doing stuff too. Like, you're going to carry that stuff home. Mm-hmm. And we built an industrial society based on the Wizard of Oz idea.
Yeah.
Pay no attention to the man behind the curtain.
Right.
And that's not how a proper home should work. There should be discourse. How am I going to know how to handle the stress of being a dad if my dad is never wrong and never has stress?
Yes. And see, my wife and I talk about that quite often. And my wife worries that, she doesn't want to argue in front of the kids all that often. I'm kind of the opposite of that, where I think as long as they're not screaming and cussing each other, obviously, which we really don't ever do that. Maybe our earlier years, but as
first 2 years, man,
it's crazy. But once you can get past that threshold of the tough years, as I will call them, it's a beautiful thing. And whether you're religious or not, I believe that God blesses you for sticking it out through a marriage. And if you truly love each other, I think that it just blossoms into something completely different, into some type of glorious and beautiful, prosperous partnership.
Completely agree. And I also think we grow as individuals in a way that you won't grow with anybody that could leave at any time.
Yeah, and I agree with that.
That's why that commitment, that vow of being welded together forever.
Yes.
Is so important.
And just get stronger with time as long as you stay true to your vows, essentially, and true to your partner. But, we talk about arguing, and, I think it's actually a good thing for our kids to see us. My wife and I argue all the time, but it's over nonsense, like just stupid little things in the house. We don't fight over money really anymore. We don't fight over serious topics. But I think it's important for children to see that minor discord so that they know that relationships are not meant to be perfect at all. You're going to have, it's a partnership. So you're going to have 50-50. That's the way it should be. So one person's most certainly almost all the time, not all the time, but many times going to disagree with the other person. And they need to see that that's normal. And back to what you were talking about with, kids, the baby boomers, essentially from World War II, growing up. And I think that those kids probably saw a lot of crazy closed door stuff that probably needed a lot of therapy. And I think a lot of that may have caused some serious mental illness with a lot of those people, baby boomers growing up. And I also think that, like my father, I'll give an example of my father, very intelligent, very smart guy. I think he has some serious stuff that has probably never been addressed, and because it wasn't allowed to be talked about back then. But then we have our generation, the first generation of, hey, it's okay to give your kids ADHD medication.
No, definitely not the first.
Well,
I would say the hippie movement.
I was in third grade, and that's when they came out with Adderall, or Ritalin.
Yeah.
Ritalin, excuse me.
Ritalin was the big thing.
Yes.
When we're both the same
and
age.
I was medicated from like 3rd grade up, and my parents had a good bit amount of money back then, and throughout pretty much my entire childhood life. So if I ever if I ever showed them any type of rebellion, or if I seemed a little hyperactive or anything like that, they would always counter that with an expensive doctor visit and probably some type of medication. And it didn't take me till later on in my adult years where, I'm not medicated at all now. Just life, people are different. All kids are different. You should probably let them, before you medicate them, you should probably let them kind of bloom a little bit, if you will, blossom a little bit into who they're going to be before you start pumping their minds full of chemicals that could alter them for the rest of their lives.
It's terrible, man. It's terrible. I've been looking into that kind of stuff a lot. And
we went from like too tough. We went from like too tough to too soft.
Exactly.
In an instant.
And that's the flip flop that I'm talking about. So we did too tough, and then we had the flower power movement in the hippie generation. Then Gen Xers, so the 80s, the whole acid,
Yeah.
like,
oh yeah.
It was some kind of weird blend.
The LSD. Oh yeah.
But it was kind of a blend of the greatest generation intensity and like rigidity,
right, with
the drugs we got from the 60s.
Yeah.
And then 90s come along, millennials, which is what we are somehow.
Yep. The acid days.
Yeah.
Not acid as in like LSD, but like, acid jeans,
yeah,
acid shirts.
Tie-dye.
Yeah, tie-dye.
Tie-dye was
we're
back.
Bringing it back,
after,
yep.
Yeah, and well, it's nice to see that
too. The Jinko shorts.
And so now I'm hoping we're kind of settling down. Like, I don't think we realize just how much the world wars affected us
took a toll
as a humanity across time.
Yeah.
So we go to one extreme, the other.
Right.
But it's just like a bouncing ball. It's just like, it's finally settling. Is it going to settle in a place that's comfortable? And I think the only way we're going to know is if we start having good discourse between opposing points of view.
Yeah, you got to talk about it, man. You definitely got to talk about it, and it can't just be so narrow-minded. It can't just have, we can't all just have one view. There needs to be multiple views. We need to ask questions about everything for the most part. And I think a lot of us, like you were just saying, I think a lot of us with the bouncing ball, we're trying to figure it out. We're doing the best that we can. And there's many of us that think for ourselves, yourself, me, many other viewers, people that are watching this show, just kind of proves that you're willing to look and watch another perspective, listen to another perspective. But there's so many people out there, unfortunately, that will not. They're kind of candle boxed into like just the new social norm, and I'm going to call it the past decade norm, or even really the 2005 and up norm, where dare I say it, it's really like Democrats that have gone far left liberal. And you can make the same argument about the right side, okay, but it seems that a lot of these people, like MTV has had an insane, or not just MTV, but social media in general, their ideas and their insane ideas, the ideas that are so far left, they become dangerous. Like the whole, and again, this is kind of controversial, but we're talking about abortion, killing babies, like right as they're allowed to be born in some states now. That's just one really sick thing, in my opinion. Allowing children to take hormonal, therapy at the age of 4 and 5, sex operations at children's sex I mean, just crazy stuff that we should not be allowing. So that's my real thing there, is like, so you have these group of people, and they're the ones that essentially there's a lot of them nowadays. So we're kind of, there's us, and then there's people that think for themselves, and then there's people that are just cookie cutter. They're listening to the media nonstop. That's all they listen to, the MSM, mainstream media. They all they do is pump their kids full of television and all the social media that's out there. They just listen to that, and that's their truth.
Yeah.
And it's sad. It's
propaganda.
Truly sad. Propaganda.
Yeah. So I remember in the 90s, the idea, talking about the liberal movement, because I do think they've gone too far in a lot of ways.
Yeah.
But it's hard to say anybody goes too far when their root motivation is compassion. So we can talk about different topics and say, oh, well, for instance, the pro-choice argument. Well, you're oppressing the woman, not letting her make a decision about her body. So I'm not saying it's the correct thing at all. I'm not saying it's not either. We're not going to get into that one.
Right.
But I am going to say it's born of compassion for the woman's rights.
I think initially it was. But then I think it was also mutilated and manipulated back in the 60s, back when they decided to destroy the family by giving out a woman can only get welfare if the man's not in the house and things of that nature. So now all of a sudden abortion becomes not just hip, but it also becomes, hey, I need to do this so I can get some money.
Yeah, no, it's terrible.
And that's what I mean.
You're talking about the perversion.
It's been perverted. It's been diluted into something whole. And I understand what you're saying. Like, the woman should have control of her body. And I'm not saying that by any means. Like if someone was raped or something like that, we're talking about a whole nother set of circumstances.
But you're also talking about outliers of a broader
situation. Way different spectrum. Yeah, way different spectrum altogether. Because a baby, it's not the baby's fault. And, first couple weeks, first couple months, whatever I have my own beliefs on that. Mm-hmm. But I'm sorry, left wing, right wing, I don't care what your views are. A baby that is 9 months old should not be clipped in the back of the neck because that's how they kill them. They will turn that baby around and then will take a little incision and then will snip its spinal cord. It's so I've seen it and I've seen it online and it's the most disturbing thing I've ever seen. Yeah, I don't ever want to see it ever again.
And people should see it.
I wanted to see it once just so I could really see what I was up against, see what humanity is up against.
Yeah.
And it is the most disgusting thing, the most vile thing you could like an innocent life like that being snuffed out. It's just god awful.
In the one place they should be the most safe.
In the one place they should be the most safe. Correct. Yeah. Correct. So.
Well, that's heavy.
Yeah. Heavy stuff.
It went dark how it's heavy? You know how it's heavy? Gravity.
Oh, he's
How's that for a segue?
Changing the topic on us.
Yeah. So, one of the things that I've seen about you is you question a lot of very established narratives.
Yes.
We'll get into the specifics here in a minute, but
we can talk about gravity if you want to.
Oh, we're going for gravity. I love gravity. For both sides of the argument, I love it. It's like, show me gravity.
Yeah.
It's like, okay, well, that's different. It also works for inertia.
Neil deGrasse Tyson, like verbatim, what is gravity?
Yeah. So questioning narratives, is that something you've always done, or did you kind of come from a household that didn't question narratives and then kind of...
And this is kind of like...
How did this start for you?
What you were talking about, like, we are kind of our own people in the beginning of our session here.
Yeah, that individual divine spark.
We have our own little spark.
Yeah.
Yeah, and eventually I think we grow into that. So what I'll say was I think there's something that initiates that spark though. So for me, I was mindlessly, this is before I really had any type of controversial thought. I was mindlessly scrolling through, I think it was either Facebook or MySpace. This is like 10 years ago, 2009, 2010. And I saw this video, which, by the way, they are no longer around, and I'm about to tell you the name of it here in a second. But this, before I expose the name, this particular individual, extremely intelligent, family guy, he ended up moving his family years ago from the United States to Argentina or some other like indigenous area where they just like made their own little cabin in the woods and they are like living just off the grid.
Wow.
They got pigs, goats, chicken, all the works. So anyway, so the name of his YouTube channel at the time was called Storm Clouds Gathering, which I always thought was a very unique name for a truther channel. So his videos for the time 10 years ago were exceptionally put together. And I think that they were edited and put together better than most videos are nowadays. All right. He is the guy that opened my mind to government corruption and not necessarily the whole flat earth argument. He didn't ever talk about that. This was just simple monetary type stuff, what the government does, the dollar, how terrible it's become over the years ever since Nixon took it off the gold standard in the 70s. He talks about how the corruption of the government and 9/11 and just a plethora of things about how we invaded all those different countries and put in public establishment, puppetist governments in place. So that's what he talked about. And I encourage all of you guys, he still has a few videos up. He doesn't make them anymore, but it's called Storm Clouds Gathering. You watch one of them, you're going to be hooked.
Oh, yeah?
Yeah, it's so much fun to watch them. He's so well spoken, and he just seems like a really good guy. And I actually got to talk to him twice on like a live chat years and years ago. But he's a good guy. He's a good guy. But yeah, Storm Clouds Gathering, check that out. That's what started me.
Yeah.
That's what started my whole pursuit of looking into the truth, and from there it just kind of grew.
Or at least questioning the unquestioned truths.
Yes, exactly. Right? Questioning our the way we live, questioning our truth, what we're told as is truth. Mm-hmm. I like to question it all, for sure.
Good. That's awesome.
Some things are truth that we are told, but then I think there's a lot of things that are not.
Well, so there's a certain level of just assumption. You just go with it because, honestly, society just won't survive if we're caught in the weeds and the quicksand of questioning every little detail. Yeah. But when you get a minute, if there's a like a big topic that you've kind of just assumed, yeah, that works. It's a fun exercise to go, okay, well, I know it works. How does it work?
Right.
Who says it doesn't work?
Correct.
Why do they say it doesn't work?
Right.
Right?
Start getting into it, man.
Do they have good points?
Yep.
And like the flat earth thing, that's a great example in a lot of ways, because until 500 years ago, we thought the earth was flat as a society.
Yep.
For really good reasons.
Yeah. And they tell you
lots of good reasons.
Our current truth tells you that we knew it was round for thousands of years, but that's really not true.
Right.
So that's just one example.
Surmised.
Small example.
Yeah, surmised for thousands of years, but surmised quickly becomes, we've just known it for thousands of years.
Yeah, it never called on. It never did. Nicholas Copernicus is the one that essentially got it all encapsulated and, brought that heliocentric model to real light, and it actually called on. And we can talk about that too many times with Tycho Brahe and all those other famous philosophers and astronomers.
Yeah. Well, you and I have spent weeks discussing these things before, so we could go for weeks.
Well, easily. We can do like a small breakdown. I mean, because 500 BC, which was Pythagoras of Samos, is the guy that he was in Greece. He was a mathematician and philosopher. He's the one that actually initiated the whole heliocentric model, but his way of thinking about it was actually a little bit different than the way ours is today. So his didn't ever really catch on. It just kind of stayed in his little he taught at some type of, I guess you would call it a college back then, or a school back then, and that stayed around for a few hundred years, and then it just kind of completely died away. And then 1,000 years later, a guy named Plato, you guys have probably heard of him.
No.
He actually picked up the heliocentric backup, and then from him he had one of his students called Aristotle. I'm sure you guys have heard of Aristotle. He's actually created a book called On the Heavens, which had three main topics of why he really thought the Earth was a spinning globe on an axis and all this other stuff. And then he had Eratosthenes after him, so on and so forth. But it never really caught on until, like you said, 500 years ago. I just want to give you guys a little bit of backstory on how long this has been going on, and we just never really thought about it until never really caught on until about 500 years ago.
Well, it could be argued too that we didn't have the empirical methods to properly explore those ideas.
We didn't have telephones, we didn't have social media to push all the information out. So.
Well, I more meant as far as like we didn't have a scientific method. Bacon didn't come around until roughly 300 or 400 or 500 years ago.
Well, they had their own methods though that they would use. Plenty of methods,
but not what we call the scientific method as we understand it now. The scientific method as we understand it now is meant to strip out all or as many biases as possible. Not all.
Correct.
Because you can't. You have to have presuppositions.
Right.
But the idea is to get the observer and their biased thinking as far out of it as possible.
Correct, yeah. You want it to be
new.
You want it to be completely transparent if possible. And that's for both sides as well. And that's how you can come to real truth, is if you got two people completely different opposite sides. And honestly, it's very difficult to bring somebody out of their normalcy and out of what they truly believe. So, it takes, I guess you'd call them a brave individual, in order, because you have to release your ego in order to think of or believe in something else. But you are 100% correct on the fact where there's so many different, more intelligent methods and ways of going about things as well, mathematically, scientifically, how to prove certain things. And that's another reason why I find it so fascinating that certain things still cannot be proven. So,
yeah. Well, gravity is a great one.
Yeah, it's very strange.
We know molecules attract each other equally, according to Newton.
Well, according to
Newton.
According to Newton, yeah.
And so if something has more mass, it not only has more attraction because it's got more molecules, but it also has more mass, so it takes more inertia to get it to move. So the smaller thing will attract at a higher rate.
Yeah, and you would think that. Right? I mean, and that seems to make sense. It does. But there's other things that kind of contradict it as well. Like, how does a bird fly in the sky? And I understand about the lightness of the bird and things like that compared to the gravity, but density and buoyancy is really all gravity is. And it's true. I mean, if you think about it in a medium, so any medium that you have, whether it be water, air, the heavier an object through the lighter the medium is going to fall.
Well,
and
gravity
the lighter it's going to raise.
Gravity is a force.
That's what they say.
Density and buoyancy are not forces.
So that's how they essentially separate them.
Yeah.
But in reality, they are technically kind of the same thing, and there's no way to disprove it. There has been people that have tried to disprove it.
There are a lot
of these weird contraptions where they're like, oh, well, look. Oh, wait, the ball dropped, so now it's real. But in reality, it's just density and mass that's fallen to the floor because the medium's
Okay,
oxygen.
So a quick side question then.
Sure.
In vacuum,
yes,
things still fall the same direction.
Vacuum?
In vacuum.
So
if you create a vacuum tube, put a ping pong ball in it,
okay,
it still falls in the same direction.
Down?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, not down. Very important distinction here.
Yeah.
Toward the center of the mass of the Earth.
Yeah. So I actually cannot remember. I've seen quite a few videos on vacuum, people creating vacuum environment. I can't remember actually seeing that or not, so I don't want to speak on that per se. The only thing I know for a fact with the whole vacuum thing, and I've seen this many, many times, is that you cannot create spark. You cannot create any kind of force in a vacuum whatsoever, ignition-wise. You just it cannot be done. Even with like,
unless you expel oxygen with the spark.
I've heard that too, man, and I actually thought like that's I've heard that's what NASA does and blah blah blah, but
it's how a turbo pump works on a rocket.
Yeah,
engine.
But I mean at the same time,
the purpose of the turbo pump actually.
That's and I mean I've heard all that stuff, man, but until you actually like see it, like in my opinion, it's not valid.
Right. Got to see it with your own eyes, man.
I got to see it, man. And not even that, though, man. Like, there's so many different things that still don't add up in those type of models as well, in my opinion, that it just doesn't make sense. It doesn't make sense to a lot of people. And I think that's where all the questions essentially are coming from. But like with the whole gravity thing, I mean, I know people like to technicalize it and make it super duper theoretical and add a bunch of numbers to it, but at the end of the day, I really feel like gravity is just density and buoyancy.
It's buoyancy of oxygen.
Yeah,
it's just buoyancy in the air rather than buoyancy like a fish adjusts its buoyancy.
I think it can be explained as simple as any medium where an object is traveling through. The heavier the heavier the object, as long as the medium is not as heavy as the object, it's going to fall. You
mean more dense?
The more dense the medium is, correct. Okay. And if it's lighter, if the object's lighter, then it's going to obviously raise through the medium.
Right.
So essentially that's what I think gravity is, and I think that's how it works.
Yeah.
Another thing.
It's a better explanation than I've heard a lot of people who are globers say.
Well, another thing is like
it's
also
at least more thought out.
The atmosphere, man, like the whole like we're talking, we're taught that like there's this massive layer, right, that keeps our ecosystem in, I guess you would call it, like all of our oxygen and our air separated from space, right? So the thing that doesn't make sense to me though, and you can watch tons of videos on this, but I don't understand how you can just go right into space from our Earth. That to me that doesn't make any sense. If we're encapsulated in something that's spinning over 1,000 miles an hour, because that's what they're saying, Earth spins over 1,000 miles an hour.
Yeah.
And Earth, along with everything else, is spinning thousands and thousands of miles. That we're spinning like, was it 10 or 20,000 miles, maybe 60,000 miles an hour around the sun?
Yeah, it's the whole intro to Big Bang Theory.
Yes,
yeah.
But then that is like going even further. Like, how do they come up with that stuff? In my opinion, it's crazy.
Yeah.
And that's the whole reason why I don't really believe in the whole space thing either, is because, like we were just talking about with vacuum, if space is truly a vacuum like they say it is, I don't think the propulsion is valid. And if for some reason, if you can figure out a way to make propulsion in a vacuum, I don't think it would be easily controlled like they make it look like it is, on space shuttles and things like that.
So that's one of the arguments I have, though.
Well, have you ever heard of, like, so we're talking about like where our oh my goodness, Earth is spinning over 1,000 miles an hour. So like our ecosystem inside of the Earth, we're encapsulated and we're basically safe, I guess you'd call it, from space. That's how it separates us from space, is like our thermosphere and our atmosphere and all that other stuff.
And the Van Allen belts.
The Van Allen radiation belts, that's a whole nother thing we can talk about.
But they work to negate the... They all seem to work together as like a filtration system, from what I've studied, to where the other harmful things that are in the... So coming back to real quick.
Sure.
There's a lot of misnomers and a lot of just poor articulations of understanding of both sides, I think.
Okay.
One of them is vacuum. It's not a vacuum. It's near vacuum.
So you're saying space is not a vacuum?
It's not. There's no such thing as an absolute vacuum. There is a near vacuum.
It's void of any oxygen. It's void of anything.
Of atmosphere.
Yes.
But there are things in it. So a true vacuum would have absolutely nothing.
Right. Yeah. Almost nothingness.
Which is what a lot of people think
there's
space
another
is.
Argument
but when you actually look into it, it's not. That's such an oversimplistic way to look at it, as being absolute vacuum.
Yeah, but that's kind of.
But it also makes sense, because you don't need to know to get to the store.
Yeah.
What the actual?
I feel like that's what we're
is.
given, though. That information.
It's a low res.
And it's not enough for me. And there's so much to talk about. I could get jumbled up in my thoughts with all the things we could talk about.
Sure, me too.
But
I'm terrible about it.
We'll just talk about the Van Allen radiation belt. So,
well, first, before we do that, I think we should at least establish. I talked to a lot of people who are surprised when I say, "Yeah, I was talking with a couple of buddies the other day. They're subscribers to the Flat Earth hypothesis or theory. You could call it theory, because they are testing it.
Yeah. Well, we can't prove it either.
But then they say, well, what do they think it looks like? And so we've got this little visual aid here. It's not going to translate hardly at all on audio only, but just so you know, we have an atlas. It's my kid's toy, actually. But the countries will actually disconnect from the globe, and then we're going to put them on what's basically a serving tray, and just kind of talk about the difference. Now, on a globe model, there are two poles, which are the Arctic and the Antarctic, basically. North and South Pole, both very frozen, right? For the globe perspective, those are the poles. They're the top and bottom of the ball. They're where the axis is that's moving,
kind of on an axis.
Yeah, kind of, right. For Flat Earth, it's the same. It's all the same geography, except you take the Antarctic.
You just flatten it down. You just flatten that thing right down.
Well, not exactly. You take the Antarctic underneath, right? And you make a hole, and then you stretch it open.
Yeah, you basically take it and you flatten it out.
So now, instead of having the Antarctic being one continent that's centrally located, what you're going to have is a rim around the disk of the ice wall, which we'll hopefully get to. Yeah. And then you've got the Arctic in the middle, North Pole, still doing its thing. Looks exactly like it would. So it's not as dramatically different. And I can.
No, it's really not. Yeah.
Here.
The azimuthal equidistant map, or a Gleason's map, or
this one here is Ferguson's map.
The United Nations, their logo, official logo.
Yeah, just look at that.
Is a flat Earth map.
It is.
You want to call it?
It's perfect. Yeah,
it's kind of
a great
funny.
example.
I feel like they're like laughing at us too sometimes.
Well, if they are what the flat Earth community, as far as I've found, thinks they are, then they are laughing at us.
Well, Hitler also used a lot of flat Earth maps. We can talk about this on another time. But
yeah.
Hitler apparently, there's a lot of theories that Hitler ended up going off into Antarctica and finding new land and all sorts of crazy stuff.
He dabbled in a lot of stuff. So real quick, we're just going to do a quick demonstration here. I'm going to actually, I'll do it.
Okay.
I was thinking about it. I was like, oh no, he's down in that kit. So we're just going to take a few countries here, a few continents. This is not a complete model, okay? As Doc Brown once said, I apologize, this is not to scale or painted. And his model was still better. But if you think of, completely rearranged that. There we go. If you think of the ball opening up like so, it would look roughly like that. You've got North Pole here. South Pole is stretched around the rim.
Yeah, so Antarctica, guys, essentially, there's a massive ice wall. It's hundreds of feet high, and that essentially is
it's a specific measurement. Actually, it's 150 feet high.
Yeah. Okay. Well, there you go.
According to Admiral Byrd.
I think it's multiple different levels though too. I think that there's that one sector. Okay, but then you also have multiple different areas that have different heights.
That would make sense.
From what I've read and seen.
Well, if it's naturally occurring, it's going to have.
Yeah, exactly. But then it's like a flat plane for as far as the eye can see, essentially, in most areas. So that's really the flat Earth layout, essentially. The model. That's
now, there's different takes on that.
Model. And there's different takes.
For yours, it doesn't involve the turtle. As far as I understand,
I have heard that theory though. I have. It does not that's the where it's the pillar, I guess, or the turtle's the pillars. But in the Bible, it actually tells you that all the fixed pillars, the Earth is on fixed pillars, and there's four corners, which is also kind of strange because you can't have corners in a circle.
Well, so that's one of the things too that's worth mentioning about the Ferguson map. Is he actually based on scripture, and that was his whole idea when he wrote this book. He had it as a square with a disc in the middle.
Now that I'm actually looking at that actually almost looks like you're looking almost like a concave, because there's also a concave theory as well.
Yeah, so the concave here, I like that because it actually gives you some gradients for the hills across distance, things like that.
Yeah, there's definitely that.
It's well thought out, at the very least, right?
Sure.
Guys have spent their entire lives establishing why they believe what they believe, which is more than you can say for a lot of people.
Sure.
They just go with it.
Yeah.
So you're not going with it. You're like, you know what? If somebody asks me what I believe, I'm going to be able to tell them why and how.
Yep.
So we've got this going on. Coming back to gravity, and then we'll get to Van Allen.
Okay.
Because I love Van Allen. Van Allen's actually the conversation topic that you and I got hung up on, where I learned the most about astrophysics that I have ever known.
I'm gonna be honest with you, man. Who comes up with that stuff? All these volumes of data. Like it's just it's silly, man. There's honestly, I think there's a few people that make this stuff up, but they don't really have anything tangible behind it. They're just literally creating it.
I'll argue you don't have a handful of people that can come up with that much creative material.
I think there are some. I think there's a lot of genius people out there.
The nearest example I will say that we have in pop culture is Marshall Mathers, because the dude is on everybody's record and he doesn't repeat anything.
Yeah,
it's insane. Like I created a Pandora station. This is Eminem for people who don't know, the rapper. I created a Pandora station. I just put his name in. That's all I did. Mm-hmm. And for 20 songs in a row, whether it was on his album or not, he was in the song.
Yeah.
It blew my mind.
Pretty crazy, isn't it?
Yeah. So we're talking about that level of talent.
Yeah.
Times whatever it takes to create the volumes and volumes and volumes of.
Yeah. I'm telling you, man. I think the volumes and volumes and volumes of data. Maybe not all of it's all crap. I'm not saying that all of it's crap, but I do think it's extremely intelligent men that are sitting. Not all. I mean, the way I'm saying it makes me probably look kind of silly because I'm talking about a guy that's just, these guys are sitting in rooms making books. That's obviously not what it is. They do their own theories. They probably make their own experiments and they come up with their own facts. And I appreciate that. What I'm trying to say is that I think a lot of this is more black and white then there's not as much gray area in a lot of it as people are making it out to be. There's not as much technicality as people are making out to be. There's no real need to make a mile-long equation for what we're really talking about. In fact, you can go outside and kind of do a couple of your own experiments and see and disprove a couple of things right off the bat that really will open your eyes to, okay, well, I may not know everything, because I don't say that I'm knowing everything by no means. I am still I can, if you have an idea that I can see and it's valid to me and and it's very obvious, then I would probably go that route.
Well, we still need to do it, because I want to do a 2-mile shot.
Yes.
Because you and I are into rifle.
We need to do that.
We're into marksmanship.
Yes.
And if we were to shoot at 2 miles.
Well, also, P900 camera too.
If we don't use Coriolis in our factoring, we're going to miss, is my opinion.
Well, 2 miles is like, no one's going to make a 2-mile shot, man. I mean,
even like at a mile, you have to,
even
at
a mile.
400 meters, you're having to adjust a little bit.
You don't have to. There's no such thing as the Coriolis effect.
Right.
I'm just being straight up.
I know, and that's how I'm saying, like, one day you and I are going to do a long distance shot.
I don't know about you, how good you are. Me personally, I'm decent,
not going to freehand
but I can shoot like 500 yards.
I'm not going to freehand it. What we're going to do is we're going to bolt down a rifle.
Yeah.
And we're going to do all the math.
Still very difficult.
And bolt it down. And we're going to shoot. And then we're going to set up a target. And we're going to shoot the same spot without touching anything. And then we're going to do the same measurements.
Yeah.
And see if it's in the same spot.
Yeah. I'm
without
just saying
Coriolis.
it's still very, very difficult.
So that's where you and I...
Like, hell, what about the helicopter? What about a plane? Like, like if you were to lift a helicopter up like 100 feet off the ground, why did the Earth not move out from underneath of it?
Right. It's a good question.
Planes. Why, if a plane takes off and we're actually supposed to be spinning, our atmosphere is supposed to be spinning with it, why does it take, if it's going against the atmosphere, then why in the world would it, not either go faster or slower? You see what I'm saying? Yeah. Like, everything is like... Perfect. Oh, here's another thing that really got me. So you know what a gyrosphere is, right? Or a
gyroscope?
Gyroscope, thank you.
Yeah, I've got a couple of those.
There you go. Yeah. And it's been, actually, guys, I got to say this. It's been a long time since I've talked about a lot of this, so sorry if I'm kind of spit and sputtering a little bit. It's
great,
been
man.
months and months. So Chase is really just making me remember half the stuff that I already knew. So anyways, a gyroscope is on most airplanes, all airplanes, big commercial airplanes.
For stabilization.
Very simple way it works. It's essentially like this ball type thing, and it shows north, south, east, west, essentially kind of which way you're tilting. Is that right?
Not exactly. Right? I think you might be looking at one of the gauges.
Well, what is the gyroscope is that ball that's encapsulated, right? And it just kind of moves east, south,
I think that'll work.
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't know what the technical term for that particular instrument is. The gyroscope usually is in spinning motion.
Right, okay, so
what it does is it's actually, you would never see it.
What it's used for, though, is if you're going up, it'll move.
The thing you're talking about, yeah. You can get one of those for your dashboard for your car.
Yeah, okay. Yeah, but that's a gyroscope, isn't it?
No.
That's what I mean.
It's got a different name, I think.
Because I'm in this class with this pilot, and he's always talking about that's the gyroscope.
That might be a gyroscope, but it's not what I was thinking of in a plane.
So
I'm thinking of in a plane is the stabilizing elements. So when you spin something up and you get some inertia going,
sure,
it's just like how your bicycle stays up.
Sure,
the wheel, it's spinning, is creating an inertial.
Absolutely.
Force.
The gyroscope. So when you're flying in a plane, outside of when you're moving up, going up, and going down, it always stays 100% flat. And I've seen hours of video feed on this.
I've flown and it doesn't do that.
I've seen it, and I've also have pilots telling me.
Watch it.
Yes. No, when you
okay.
go up and you go down, absolutely, you're right. It does move. Obviously, what I'm saying is, when you get to a certain altitude, like a big commercial jet that's going on a 10-hour flight to China or something,
30,000 feet.
Yeah, 30,000 feet. So when you're going, it obviously isn't moving. So my thing is though, the world is supposed to be 25,000 square feet in circumference. That's what the current model is. That's what they tell us. Okay. So with that being said, there should be at least, I think it's 8 inches per mile squared of curvature.
No, that's not the right formula.
That's the
one that's cited often.
That's
the one that's cited often, but it's not actually the one.
Let's just go ahead and
no,
say
it was something I discovered
correct.
last night. I was like, oh, now I know why.
So that's what they've been using for years.
For finding the drop.
Yeah.
Is actually just the equations this long, which to your point, you don't like them when they get that long because
Regardless.
It looks like BS when you start adding more words sometimes. It's
sure.
like,
But it is still a big globe, right?
yes.
Okay. So you're flying straight. Every so often, you're going to have to take a little bit of a dip.
No.
You don't have to take a dip.
No, because that would assume that you're flying straight line and dipping. Flying straight line and dipping.
Well, yeah, because if you keep going straight,
but
so
if
you have
you're doing a gradients, right?
You're going down.
A constant. Well,
that's what I'm saying.
There's no down in space. You're going equal to the circumference.
But what I'm saying is that it does have to fall a little bit.
No, because
if it's straight though. So here's the ball and here's the plane. So if it's just,
but it's not down. It's
what is it?
It's equal distance in relative nature to the center of the mass.
And now you're getting with the craziness, man.
Well,
look,
right.
it's a little ball.
Yeah.
When you got a plane.
Okay.
Come on.
Okay. I'll go with you. I'll go with you. Sure.
But see, here's the thing, guys. Chase is extremely intelligent and probably a good bit smarter than me when it comes to a lot of, math and science, stuff like that. But what I'm saying is a lot of this stuff is just a lot simpler when you just talk about it and show it in layman's terms. I mean, It really is. And that's what I'm trying to say is just a lot of that stuff to me doesn't make a lot of sense. And I don't think it makes a lot of sense to a lot of people. That's kind of what I'm saying.
Well, no, then that's the thing. Like, I can tell you why I think I can articulate it.
Yeah.
Because I've looked at it.
Right.
You talk to somebody who's never looked at it, never had to find the words for it as to why they believe what they believe.
But we have pilots and stuff, that are talking about this stuff.
Sure, yes.
Like commercial pilots, I'm talking
a very small minority of them, but yes.
That's true.
Yeah.
And
you think it's because they're afraid to,
Not all of them, but a lot of them.
Yeah.
And look, man, I'm not saying that what I believe is 100% facts. That is what it is. I'm just simply saying there's definitely a lot more to the whole the geocentric model versus the heliocentric model. The geocentric model does have some standing, and I think there's a lot of questions that need to be asked. And they should just be simple questions. So, and we've been talking about them, and we'll keep going with what you were going to want to go with. But
to clarify too, the heliocentric model versus the geocentric model is, in the heliocentric model, the sun is the center of the solar system,
Correct.
And the Earth revolves around it.
Yes, along with all the planets.
And the global centric model,
or the planets in our solar system, I should say,
is the Earth is in the middle, and everything else is rotating around it.
Yep, that's right. The sun and the moon, and the sun and the moon
model.
Supposedly are only a couple thousand feet above us, like 2,000 to 3,000 feet, if I'm not mistaken. And I can't remember. You can actually use
3,000 miles.
Is it 3,000
miles? 3,000 miles.
That's what they're saying. Okay, so
it's 3,000 miles, and that was with the disc. With the dome,
right?
Theory.
With the dome, yeah, and
but
it's encapsulated
exist within the dome. Yes,
correct. So, 3,000 miles above the surface of our planet here, or our disk here, excuse me. And you have the sun and the moon, and they're constantly rotating. Well, the sun actually goes a little bit faster than the moon, I believe. And then the moon itself, or wait a second, I'm sorry, I think the sun stays the same speed while the moon differs a little bit, if I'm not mistaken. And in fact, the tortoise and the hare, that whole book, the tortoise and the hare tale.
That's supposed to be the sun and the moon.
Supposed to be the sun and the moon, which is, I found that fascinating when I found that out. But around the autumnal equinox and the winter solstice, all that stuff. So the sun will, it goes faster around the further points, and then as it comes to the center, it gets slower and slower. But the moon stays the same. That's what it is. And so the moon follows it, which is why the moon a lot of times can be seen at the same time as the sun, different points of our and different points of time throughout the year. And I just find that really, really fascinating. But I also think it's interesting that, if you can see the sun and the moon very close together at the same time, to me, and a lot of other people, I also think that it's interesting because how are they on opposite sides of each other in space? There's just so many different questions
It's a great question.
Yeah.
And I think this is where you and I differ slightly in our philosophy. I agree with you, things get overcomplicated.
Yes.
But I also think both God and the devil are in the details. If you really want to find out which
in a lot of ways,
you're going to have to get that formula that's a mile long to be able to sort it out. Sometimes.
Yeah, sometimes I think you might be right.
More often than not is my perspective. I think less often
for me
is yours. Yeah.
Yeah.
But overall, I think we're still approaching it from the same rough ideas. Like, yeah, question it or don't bother.
Exactly.
Right?
Exactly.
So we were talking about gravity. One of the other things that I find interesting, briefly is seasons.
Yeah, that's what I was just daytime equinox.
So the sun and the moon are
solstice.
both actually, while they're spinning around the disk, they're moving up and down relative to the surface of the disk. They get closer and further away.
So actually, I think they, if I'm not mistaken, they stay the same height, but the moon is technically, I guess, the tortoise, and the sun is the rabbit. Okay, the hare, and that's why the sun, as it gets towards closer to the center, it gets slower and slower, and it gives time for the moon to catch up, which is why the tortoise actually ends up winning eventually. And then they both do, as they go back outwards and do the exact same thing all over again, over and over and over, kind of like the maypole, like a magnetic maypole, if you will. So I find that pretty fascinating as well. But I haven't heard that they go up and down though.
Well, so that's another thing
Is that part of the heliocentric model you're saying?
No, this is the geocentric model. Is that part of the
geocentric model? Okay.
Yeah.
So you've been doing a lot of research lately too, it sounds like.
I brushed up a little bit.
It's good,
I knew
man.
you were going to be, I've been wanting to do this for a long time.
I know, and I've been wanting to get around to doing it with you.
Yeah, and so we were talking about the up and down and seasons, and then there was something else I wanted to mention before we moved on from there. That was actually the main theme.
Well, there's a lot of...
that happens to me, though.
Well, how about this? Why don't we talk about this real quick before we go any further?
Wait, no. Perspective.
Yeah, so that's what I was going to say.
You were going to talk about sun and moon.
Mm-hmm. And perspective is a biggie.
They look roughly the same size.
Sure.
When you're perceiving them from the Earth.
Yep.
An example of...
How do they get 90 million miles away? That's that distance has changed about 50 times, too, throughout 500 years.
So I have problems with the way things change in the scientific community.
And then
but
they call
also,
it proof.
Well, the argument is that it's what we understand now based on what we can see now, and we're going to continue pursuing to find more things that we're not seeing yet.
And that is scientific.
That is proper science.
Correct.
So when people tell me they believe in science over religion, it's like, okay, so you believe in something that's an observation
changes
of
all the
something.
time. Yeah.
Yeah.
It's not fair. That's another thing. Like you said, straw man argument earlier. Yeah. It's like, oh, well, I believe this to be 100% fact, but in reality, you're just going off of what some other person said and wrote hundreds of years ago or even 10 days ago. But in reality, you really have no clue. You're just going off of what they say.
Yeah, you're just a different voice of the same ideological perspective, and it's terrible. So talking about perspective.
Yes, I love this.
You've seen The Lord of the Rings.
Yes, of course.
Right?
Except for
didn't
the
know
Hobbit.
I was going to go there. You didn't know I was going to go there.
Oh boy, here we go.
Here we go. All right, you ready?
Let's do it.
There is a scene with Ian McKellen and I forget the actor's name, but he was playing Bilbo, where they're having
Bilbo Baggins.
Yeah, but I forget the actor's name.
Yeah.
Brilliant guy. I've seen him in a few things. He's wonderful. The table that they're sitting at, in order for them to maintain scale, you can see it in the featurettes. Ian McKellen is sitting there. He's not in a suit. He's not in like a giant suit or anything like that. They had to figure out how to make Bilbo still look small.
Oh, yes.
So what they used is an old trick, and they took it to the nth degree. The table is actually multiple parts. Mm-hmm. So as the camera was moving, the table was shifting with them.
Sure.
So that even though the angle was changing, so in our case, it would be us leaving Earth and viewing the sun and the moon from a different perspective.
Yeah.
It stayed the same. Otherwise, it would have moved.
Yeah.
Right.
And I can see that perspective too. And I can, and then no pun intended, but
I mean, basic force perspective, I can make you as tall as I am.
Yes.
By
in a
you
room,
standing closer and having a fixed perspective.
And taking a picture in a certain way. That's correct. Now, see, we're talking about perspective. That's one of those things where the devil's in the details. Mm-hmm. You're right. Perspective has a very vast way of going about how you can get one thing to another, for sure, without question.
Especially for scale. That's an easy one that we can trick.
Correct.
Yeah.
So I'm with you 100% on that. Now, the reason why I believe the whole sun and the moon is encapsulated within 3,000 miles is you can actually use, and of course I can't remember the mathematical tool. It's something that what do you call it? It's you can use it at basically at the ocean is the best place to use it because you need something that's completely flat. And you measure it towards in the height and the level of where the ocean is, and you can actually find how tall an object is. You measure the height from where that object is all the way down to a completely flat surface, and you can actually find not only the circumference of the object, but also how high up it is. And that's actually how they came up with the whole 3,000 feet or 3,000 miles is because they roughly had that.
Yeah, 3,000 miles for the planet, or for the sun and the moon.
Yeah.
And then it's 31
celestial bodies.
Yeah, 31 to 3,200 feet for the dome itself, where you hit the roof.
That's what they say. Idea. That's what they say.
Which it was amazing to me. It's only a couple hundred feet difference.
Yeah, it's right under.
I said feet. It's 3,100 miles.
Yeah, I know what you mean.
So, but devil's in the details for me.
Yeah, that's true. That's true. You're I gotta be spot on kind of guy, which I can appreciate.
When you get down to this granular level, I think it's required.
Yeah, and you're probably right, man. You know, it's just when I see something for myself, man. For instance, the thing that really, I'm going to be honest, man, the thing that really got me with Flat Earth is perspective, for one. I don't even know why that never registered to me. Probably because I didn't think about perspective until I was in the 7th grade or 8th grade, you know, when we learned a little bit about it. But, you know, the trigonometry and things like that, there's a lot of that's involved, obviously. But what I was going to say was I walked out and I watched this video outside. I was actually at the beach at the time. It was like 2 years ago. It was September, I think it was, with the family. And I just started looking into the whole Flat Earth thing. I definitely was very insecure about the idea. And I remember watching this video of, again, kind of perspective, how things go out of your view and then come back in your view. Yeah. Well, here's the problem that I have. So not only Bill Nye, like you said, he's a paid actor too. Yeah. All these people years ago will tell you, and even till this day, that in fact, what was it? Aristotle, his book on the heavens, one of his 3 main points is that a boat proof that it goes over the curve is that the hole before mast goes right over the curve. And then that is proof that, you know, there's a curve there, but in reality, it's way bigger scale than that. So
you use the term there.
No matter how far.
Yeah, you use the term there, hull before mast.
Yeah.
And I just don't hull before mast.
Yeah, the front will go.
So the bottom disappears at the hull level.
Yes, so it just starts slightly going.
And the last thing you see is like the flag at the top of the mast.
Correct, exactly. Just so people can understand. Along. Yes, I appreciate that. So all you literally have to do is when it goes out of view, as long as it's a fairly clear day, get you some binoculars or a decent scope. It did not go over the curve. You just pull them back up, and that whole entire object comes up, whole and all. So you see everything. And this can go on for miles and miles, depending on how good of a camera or a scope that you have. And in my opinion, I think the best thing to use is the Nikon P900. And they actually have a P1000 now. And that's the scary thing. You want to talk about getting into some stuff that's like, oh my gosh, is this real? Is it not real? Because now I have some even more questions than I started with. And I just took some binoculars, man, and I ended up watching a boat go over the supposed curve, and then I brought it right back. So immediately I knew that was a lie that they had been telling me.
So you're talking about relative perspective.
Relative perspective. So that's what immediately got me hooked in. So now I was just digging. So if you get you a P900 camera, you can do way, way more with it. So you can actually take it, and now we're going to start I know you want to talk about the Van Allen radiation belt, so we'll go into space. We'll go into space now. Yeah. So you can take a P900 camera and look at what we're told as stars, which are massive burning balls of gas. You can look at these stars or even planets, and any one of them that you can actually pull in, you will zoom in on it, and it zooms in like 1,000, like not 1,000 miles, like at least 100 to 200 miles. It's incredible. Far. It's literally, it looks like just a bright object underwater. And you know, they say in the Bible, God created the heavens and the earth. He divided the waters from the waters. So what we believe also is that there's no space, it's water above us and there's water below us. So if you look at one of these stars through a P900 or a P1000, if you can afford a P1000, you will see these little granule lights, very bright, and they look like they're underwater. Have you ever taken like an object held on underwater and you just kind of move the water like that, and it looks kind of wavy? Yeah. That is identical to how that object looks. So NASA has done nothing but create a bunch of CGI images of Venus, Pluto. You know, that's what they think it looks like. They don't have anything that's taken any real pictures, like those massive, beautiful science books that you see, that astrology books that you see, like these planets are beautiful and the rings of Saturn and all this other stuff. All that CGI. None of that has ever been actually photo taken. Not ever. Now you can see Saturn if you have a P900 or a P1000, and it does appear that there is like this weird little thing around it, but it looks nothing like you would see in math books and science books. In fact, if you were to go to like the Vatican, you know, ironic enough, again, just kind of weird, their massive telescope, which is like really only about twice as powerful as like a P900 or P1000, if I'm not mistaken. And that thing is called Satan, by the way, Lucifer. They're massive,
bringer
which is
of light.
very strange. Yeah, bringer of light, strangely enough. So you use that as well, and it's the exact same photos. They will give you the exact same photos, which is just bigger. Big balls of light that look like there's water underneath of it. And I always found that's scary.
Yeah.
And oh my God, take a look at that. It's just scary. And it makes you feel, not necessarily small, but it immediately made me feel way closer to God. And like, we are here for a reason. Like, God, we were actually created from God. Evolution is not real. We are not just some speck of dust in a infinite galaxy, billions and trillions of miles and light years big. We are all here for a purpose, or we're all here for a terrarium.
For some aliens?
No, like a terrarium. God was bored and he decided to build a terrarium. I don't know.
Nice. I like it.
But
it's better than a simulation. I mean, a terrarium is a simulation.
It's humbling, man. It's very humbling when you take a look at those stars. So
what you're seeing in the stars, are you seeing celestial beings?
No.
That are moving around in the watery mass?
They're not moving. It's just a light.
So what do you think it is?
So I don't know. I've heard different theories. I've heard that the Book of Enoch or the Dead Sea Scrolls. Have you ever heard of that?
I know it.
So inside of that, apparently there are a few. I guess few pages in the book there where it explains that they are demons or fallen angels trapped. That's where God trapped them
between the dimensions.
Between heaven and earth, because you
realms,
have realms. Yeah. So earth, and then you have the I guess the firmament is what you would call it, which is the dome. And then you have all the water, and then you have the heavens above. And then from what I've been told, from what I've seen, is you have the big disc, right? And then below you go 7 or 8 miles down, 10 miles down, 20 miles down. Maybe you got hell there. Who knows? We don't know.
Right.
And then below that even you have more water. So everything isn't... And then maybe the turtle. Yeah. Who knows? I really have heard that, which I found fascinating. I think Elon Musk's brother mentioned that, and because I don't know him. Yeah, well, so the reason why I've even mentioned that is there was a reporter that saw Elon Musk's brother and ran up to him and asked him about flat Earth or something like that, because the guy had talked about it before, and he said, "Oh no, we're just on some big turtle's back."
Oh no, I saw that. He doesn't genuinely believe it.
I don't think so either.
Poking.
Yeah, that's what I figured. I just find it funny that he said
Buzz
that.
Aldrin. Buzz Aldrin, one of the truthers. The
originals.
I've seen him get beat up by truthers.
Oh yeah, badly. He's also older. I don't think that's fair.
It's really not fair.
It's not fair, dude.
You're picking on the guy.
He's in his 70s or 80s.
He's just gonna be like, who cares?
Yeah, dude.
I'm gonna tell you what you want for one thing, or I'm just gonna give you something to run with, just so I can laugh at you in my own time.
Well, dude, he's older.
What's he gonna do? He walked on the moon. As far as he's concerned, as far as society overall is concerned, the dude stepped onto the moon surface.
I wouldn't bug them all that much about that either,
or right behind Neil Armstrong.
See, I don't believe any of the moonwalking stuff either, man.
Yeah,
and that's it's a whole nother. Well, it's not really a whole nother topic. It's kind of integrated into what we're talking about. But have you ever seen a funny thing happen on the way to the moon? That documentary. It was actually forged in the 80s.
I have not seen this.
Or no, maybe it was the 90s. Look it up. That's another really interesting one. There's actually footage of the astronauts from Apollo 9, 10, or 11, one of the two. Not the one that blew up.
That's a lot of footage I have to look at to figure out if it's 9, 10, or 11.
Well, no. I just can't remember it. It tells you in the movie. And it actually shows the astronaut trying to make the perfect shot of Earth from low Earth orbit to make it look like it's round. It's leaked footage. It's leaked footage.
So I've seen this. The argument I have for that is not that he was trying to make it look round. He was trying to.
They say it in the video though.
Right, but what he was trying to do, and I know this because I got cameras here. Yeah. I know what it's like.
I know.
When you're recording something, these things don't see what I see.
Right.
There's a perspective. So what I'm trying to do in that moment is not to make it look round, like to fabricate anything. I'm trying to make it look like I see it right now. And the lens and the technology is it's dulling it.
Too old, yeah.
Well, it's dulling it.
Old too.
And even brand new stuff. Like I just released a video. I retouch all the colors in the shots here, not because I want it to look brighter or richer. I want it to look how I see it when we're recording.
And see, I can appreciate that,
Right.
and that's fair, actually. So the thing I would say next, though, is that same video, if you've seen it all the way through, it's a few hours long. The timestamps are completely different where they need to be. So the moon, I think, how many days did it take them, supposedly? Like 9 or something like that to get to the moon?
It takes about 4 days to get to the moon.
Is it 4?
Yeah,
so 9 days total,
it's a
maybe
9,
it was.
Yeah, you're usually spending about a day
So the
at the
timestamp...
at the satellite,
Gotcha.
which is the moon, yeah.
So the timestamp when they were in low Earth orbit was like, where they should have been at like 10 or 11 hours. They were like at 30 hours or 40 hours. So they were not, but they said that they were like right at the moon. But the timestamp was completely different. It didn't make any sense.
It makes sense if you've got 30 hours of footage.
Well, what I'm saying is, though, their timestamp did not line up with where they are at the moon. You have to watch the video. I mean,
Yeah, I'll check it out. Definitely.
I can't.
That's a new one for me. I want to see that one.
Dude, there's so much stuff, though, man. There's so much stuff to unpack here, and I can't remember everything.
Well, and there's no
verbatim.
way we're going to get them all.
Yeah,
right.
I can't remember everything
I
verbatim.
think we're hitting
either,
on some big ones.
People go look at it. All I say is just go look at it for yourselves. It's so interesting.
You should do that for anything that you just take at face value.
Yeah, exactly.
That's where you and I greatly agree.
Yeah.
I mean, let's jump. So Van Allen's cool, but it's really technical. I don't know how well it's going to translate over because it's actually two.
We can try to keep it simple.
It's 2 rings with a floating ring.
Yeah.
Which is trippy.
Right.
And the floating ring comes and goes as needed based on the stimulus from
what they tell us.
It's like, yeah.
And I think, honestly,
I learned so much about it. It was so cool.
I think honestly, all that stuff is just them overstimulating us to try to see. Luckily, we got people like you that can honestly retain most of that stuff. See, me, it would take me weeks to read all that and then finally retain it. See,
I've forgotten a lot.
Well, anyway, so I like to keep it simple.
Yeah.
So, again, we go kind of from timestamps.
Yeah.
So, Van Allen radiation belt. Well, unfortunately, that did not supposedly exist back when we went to the moon.
No, it did.
And if it did, they went clean through it.
Yes.
In fact, there's astronauts that say, oh, I don't remember a Van Allen radiation belt, but in fact, there was, and it should have killed them.
There were two. And in fact, they had to engineer through it. And that's kind of why. So that doesn't make any sense.
Again, though, from the 60s, the technology they had then versus now, why can we not go back now?
Yeah.
It doesn't make sense, man. It really doesn't.
This is where
Plus, all those tapes got erased and deleted.
Not exactly.
Where are they?
No, they've been archived on other media, right?
They probably are out there.
Files.
But
I delete files, right?
They probably are out there, but they
I
will
didn't
never
have
share
a podcast because I transferred it over to a new medium.
But you don't think it's sketchy though? Our
I think
biggest
there's a lot of
accomplishment in mankind, they can't release.
I think they were going to do something bigger. They're like, this is a stepping stone. We're going to the moon.
Yeah,
then we're gonna,
I guess.
We're gonna
man,
but also like, there's a lot of moving parts that were manual. That's one of the reasons I forgot this. This is actually,
it's analog.
My grandfather worked as a contractor.
You said something
for
about
NASA
that. Yeah, I remember you saying something about that.
During the Apollo days. He's actually got a coin. I was like, that's how I found out about it. I was like, what? They were using things like this. If you look here, these are calculators.
Yep.
He was an electrician by trade, electrical engineer. So instead of using a computer, it's a guy who knows the steps on what he's supposed to do on these neat sliding pieces of cardboard and paper.
Sure.
Which,
and that
thank
is
you,
really
Papa,
cool.
for those because I love these. So to think that it would be impossible for people to go somewhere like the moon using stuff like that, it's not an insane idea.
I just think it's a
You should look at
disc.
it. You should look at it and go, holy cow, understand the gravity of the amount of effort and the amount of genius that had to go into doing something like that.
Sure.
Now, not to put words in your mouth, but that's where you go, or they just didn't go.
Kind of. There's a lot of different things that don't make sense.
Yeah.
Is what I'm saying. I think that I'm not saying that NASA doesn't exist. I'm not saying all these people with all these different jobs don't exist. I think that maybe a few of the very, very high up people that ran NASA probably knew about it. I think that all these people were given very technical jobs, very explicit jobs, okay? But in reality, I really don't think that they may have gone into low Earth orbit, okay? They probably stayed in low Earth orbit, and people needed to do this kind of thing to keep them there safely. I'm not disputing that whatsoever.
Well, not if gravity doesn't work.
Wait, hold on.
If gravity doesn't exist, then the way they went
they could have,
doesn't make sense.
But yeah, that's what I'm saying, man. Like, so They could have just been in the air though. Like, you know how you'll do like, what are those airplanes? They'll go up there and then they'll just fly back down and everybody's kind of falling in it, but it looks like you're floating. If that makes sense.
You're talking about the Vomit Comet.
The Vomit Comet.
The Vomit Comet. I don't know what the technical name is. It's a big cargo plane for people who don't know. That's how they shot most of Apollo 13.
Okay.
All of the zero-G scenes of Apollo 13. It's actually down in a tube. That's why you've got a very controlled perspective on what's going on. And they could shoot for about 10 to 15 minutes at a time, I think.
Yeah.
Because that's how the plane is falling at the same rate as the pull of gravity.
Right.
And when you hit that, everything inside becomes
exactly. Yeah, and you're like
just
floating
float.
and stuff.
It's amazing.
It's interesting.
It's super cool stuff.
Yeah, and you can video for a couple minutes.
Yeah,
and then redo it all over again.
Yeah, and then you spice it all together, and now you've got
a nice little movie or video or something.
So here's the thing, and this is where you and I hit a wall, I think, in our discussions, where you can prove to your satisfaction that we didn't go to the moon. I can prove that we couldn't fake it on film at the time without getting busted.
I think we did get busted though.
We didn't. It's 146 minutes
I think they got busted big
uncut footage that people watched live.
Yeah. And I'm gonna be honest with you, man,
I think there was a CIA operation as a backup. I think the Kubrick thing, I think that holds a little bit.
Stanley Kubrick is the one that was integrated with whole NASA and Walt Disney and all them.
I do, yeah. And it's worth looking at. There's a great Ron Perlman film about this.
I love Ron Perlman.
Oh, he's great in it too. He's the CIA agent that is hired to go hire Kubrick, and he accidentally hires the wrong guy. It's so funny.
That's awesome.
It's so funny. Yeah, definitely see that one. It was great.
I feel like what I've found out in person though, like just visuals and so many things, so many lies that I've busted myself. I feel like they weigh more than the stuff that I'm shown that I don't even understand.
But if I tell you how much film would be required, the film the magazine necessary for 146 minutes, I think it is of uncut footage that they broadcast live. You had to record it because you have to simulate the slow moving of space and the gravity and all that stuff, the lower gravity, to maintain your hoax, right? It's bigger than a Volkswagen.
But they should still have it, that's what I'm saying.
The film cartridge, the magazine, just to hold all that film. Not to mention how much film that is. And when you're doing it reel to reel, it breaks all the time. I forgot to tell you. It breaks all the time.
I forgot to mention this. Yeah. So I don't even know what the heck I'm thinking about the whole atmosphere thing. So I've actually heard that, like you said a second ago, that really everything, the moon landing was a complete hoax. It was actually done in a studio, so on and so forth.
Yeah, I've heard that. I looked into it hard.
And then I've also heard the low orbit thing where, people are videotaping from low Earth orbit. But then you got, like you just said, it kind of contradicts the whole space thing. So how are they even up there with a vacuum? So, I mean, that is a lot of good points there, man, on both sides in reality.
Yeah, a lot of good questions.
It really is. And so here's what I think we should do. I don't think the Coriolis effect is a fair way to gauge it. I really don't. Because there's just, again, so many different odds and ends that take place that I don't think we'd ever really be spot on. And plus on top of that, I can tell you right now, and you probably already noticed you were a military guy, right?
A little bit.
So yeah, and you're a marksman. So 500 yards, even at a dead still, can be somewhat difficult depending on the wind and things like that. That's really the only
That's why I'm going to take us out of it. We're going to put it on an arm situation.
Well, and we can do that too, man. But at the same time, we're still going to, I think our biggest enemy there is going to be wind, and probably
but guys do
the air.
Agreed. Ideally, it would be in vacuum.
Yeah. Well, yeah, I guess. Right. But
because you can argue buoyancy. Buoyancy would come into effect.
Yeah, well, it's
going to start.
It's going to start falling. Yeah, and that's what I'm saying, man. Too. And there's been a lot of contraptions made over the years where people have tried to prove gravity, but in reality, in my opinion, you can't see it, which there's a lot of things that exist that you can't see, like oxygen and things like that.
COVID-19.
COVID-19.
Yeah.
You can't.
You like that?
I love it. You can't taste it, feel it, touch it, smell it, whatever. Okay.
Yeah.
So, and that's not necessarily the biggest thing, but what I was trying to get at before we kind of spouted out there a little bit. No, it's okay. Wait, it's good for the show.
It's terrible.
Me too, all the time. I go from one thing to another, and then I'm really good at talking about one thing, and then all of a sudden I can't remember any of it. But so what we need to be able to do, which we can't because it's illegal, but I would love to be like Y'all Antoy, which have you researched him at all?
No.
So he's one of the only very few famous explorers that have actually tried to explore Antarctica himself.
Mm-hmm.
But unfortunately, this was after the Antarctic Treaty of the 60s, you know, where now there's like over 4 dozen countries now that are involved in the treaty. Mm-hmm. No one can build there. No one can really explore there except for probably certain governments and whatnot. But we need to go there, figure out a way to go there and go all the way down, go all the way back past Antarctica. Because Richard E. Byrd said that there was Admiral
Richard E. Byrd. Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And his last Operation High Jump, I believe it was, Operation Deep Freeze, I believe it was.
Deep Freeze, yep.
In the late 50s. Yes, sir. So that one they went up on, and they actually had airplanes and stuff, and he actually noted in his diary that there was another landmass a couple hundred miles past Antarctica's border. It was larger than the size of North America. So, you know, it had mountains, it was green, very interesting things. And he said, so that would actually be if we were looking at it on the ball, it'd be on the Indian Ocean. Mm-hmm. So that piece of land would have been found by now. So that's another very interesting just thing, you know, in general. But that's really the only way that we could debunk Antarctica, essentially, is if
they climb the ice wall,
or fly over it, and just legitimately, because they have people all the time that are showing videos. Oh, look, we flew over Antarctica, or they're on some special little paid vacation there where they can walk around. But they are, I promise you, they are. First of all, it's so large and vast. They are in a special area that is dedicated for tourism or certain little here's and there's that you can go into.
You think it's staged? You think it's Jurassic Park?
Basically, yeah, kind of. I want to check it out myself.
T-Rex and the environment.
Yes.
Just
and why do they turn people away at gunpoint for just? I mean, if it's at their own peril, let them go. I know it's a crazy environment, but why not? You know.
So that's the philosophy, though, where you and I come back to agreeing. Government should not mandate my own safety.
Right. Yeah.
Masks.
Exactly.
Masks for COVID-19 is a big deal right now.
Yeah.
In some areas, it's illegal to be in public without a mask.
Right.
Look at this beard, folks. Like, look at the beard. If I put a mask on this, it does nothing. Like, there's no seal. So how far are we going to go? Are we going to say now I have to shave my beard in order to get a good seal so that the mask is effective?
Correct.
Where does that line show up?
Where does it stop? Yeah.
And then why? Give me the logic as to why the line is there. Because it's like, well, you know, making you shave is just ridiculous.
That's a form of control.
Controlling me for my own safety.
Silly.
I do not believe seatbelts should be compulsory.
Yeah.
I just don't.
Yeah.
You want to do that? You want to risk it?
Right.
Should you wear a seatbelt? Absolutely.
Exactly.
Absolutely.
But it's not going to hurt somebody else from you not wearing one. Unless you have a passenger and your arm and body go somewhere, I guess.
Yeah, it's a stretch. So it's a stretch. You have to say, well, okay, you not wearing a seatbelt. Let's say a bunch of people don't wear seatbelts. Mm-hmm. Now you're working the healthcare system harder.
Yeah.
With unnecessary accidents.
Right.
You're working the healthcare system harder. That requires more tax dollars to fund.
Exactly.
If you're having to get more tax dollars, now you're oppressing people more than you needed to. So
it's true.
But it's to your point, it's a really long reach to get there.
Yep.
Is it right? I don't know.
I know. Exactly. And that's where you get your gray area. Yeah. In my opinion. Mm-hmm. There's your gray area.
So what do you think? Like, we're seeing this in the technology age now. People are getting obviously censored. Mm-hmm. Professionals.
Oh, yeah.
People who are having dissenting opinions.
Yep.
I mean, and it's not that they can't speak about it. It's that
they speak about it and then they get shut down.
Popular platforms won't support it.
Correct.
Based on
the management.
Well, the management of the popular platform does not agree with where they're coming from.
Or they do agree, but they still can't because they know they'll get shut down.
Yeah. You remember when they YouTube put in that you couldn't have firearms on your channel? Yeah. Yep. They had all these guys. They had shows. They had tons of shows.
Oh yeah.
You know where they went?
And there are a couple of tubes.
PornTube.
Really?
YouPorn and PornTube started hosting them because
Really? I knew there's a couple of different tubes, not PornTubes, but like other tubes.
Whatever you want to put on our channel, you can put it.
Wow. And I know there are tubes like that. I know that for a fact.
So crazy to me to think that that porn sites are more about free speech
and
supporting discussion.
Yep.
and airing thoughts that may be mistaken.
Yeah.
If you're wrong, you should be able to put it out there and get beat up by society for your opinion.
Who cares? Exactly.
You just should, because then you can actually go, okay, well, maybe I should update my model.
Right.
Maybe I'm missing something.
Right.
If I never get to voice it, and then you shut me down.
Right. It doesn't ever get...
I don't stop believing it.
Yeah, and you don't get... exactly, you don't get corrected either.
Right, and I get bitter.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. Yeah. That's true.
Yeah.
And see, though, but then it goes into a whole other argument, too, though. So why are you really censoring us?
Right.
You know? So if Flat Earth or masks for COVID or multiple different topics, if they are 100% wrong and silly, why not make us look, just let us make ourselves look like fools?
Well, and it comes back to that compassionate argument that you and I were talking about, I think, before we started, is the liberal perspective comes from one of compassion.
Yep. And it turns into communism.
At a certain level of analysis.
And they start forcing it down people's throats.
Like, yeah. Well,
and same with the right. It's far right's the exact same way.
Well, that's the funny thing, and I'm working on this theory. Hitler was liberal, which is a really funny thing to think about. He was
an animal rights advocate. He loved animals.
He's an artist.
He was an artist. He was also vegan, but he took a ton of drugs.
Yeah, and well, I mean,
a lot of drugs.
Who's not medicated right now in the U.S.?
That's true. And plus, he had a massive country with a massive war he was doing.
But,
and by the way,
but he's labeled as a right-wing extremist. Why?
Well, because they want to shut the right down.
It's because the organization that implemented the liberal ideas that he had, the extreme liberal ideas that he had, was conservative. They're regimented. And what we've learned with personality types is the entrepreneurs are usually left-leaning in their philosophy.
Right. It's just like the big switch. The big switch never really happened. In fact, there was only like 20 or 30% people that actually switched, and they were actually more of like the rich versus like the middle class and poor. So most people actually just kept their opinions of the left and the right and their belief system. But I do know that a lot of, people that run the place, run the world, are the ones, the horde. They like to keep it like that. Though the whole Andrew Jackson, the guy's on a $20 bill. He was like one of the biggest slave advocates and slave owners there were. But yet he's on a $20 bill.
He's not idolized though.
No, he's not.
Between the Trail of Tears. The
Trail of Tears was during his whole thing.
Yeah. Well, he masterminded.
He masterminded it. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. And then the slave ownership
idea,
you know that. Things like that. Well, again,
you got to know history, man.
Know where you're coming from. Know what you're talking about.
Correct.
At least because you looked at it, not because you're repeating what somebody else said. And that's where our philosophies are very much aligned. Yeah. When I see political advocates and protesters just repeating mantras that were told to them by a politician they liked or whatever, it's like, those aren't your words.
They want the right to look bad though too. And I'm not necessarily saying the right's right or wrong.
Well, the right's doing it to the left now too. And
exactly. That's what I hate about it. I know, man, because the right is like they have their own weird extreme wing now, and I really don't like it because it's starting to just mimic the exact same opposite, and it's all belongs pretty much nowadays to the same bird. But it used to be you got the blue dog Democrat and you had the rich red Republican, and honestly they were two separate ideas, but they still loved America. Mm-hmm. And at the end of the day, as long as American values were still held in place, they all agreed.
Well, it's neat to me to see that the framework of the framers is still here, in that you had Hamilton, far federalist statist. He wanted nobles. He wanted the nobility structure to come back. And he's the founder of the Federal Reserve. Yeah. It's like, okay. And then you've got Jefferson, who's like, look, liberty, man. Liberty, personal liberty.
Right.
Everybody should be free. He was pretty much on, I'm going to get in trouble for this. He did not profess it, but his philosophies do align with anarchy.
Mm-hmm. And a lot of people, there's a lot of arguments saying that anarchy isn't all that bad, depending on how it's structured.
Voluntarist society makes sense.
Yeah, it does. Because you can govern yourselves, and if you have, let's say you have a small town of 100 people. Well, if you all govern yourselves and you're all pretty sound-minded people for the most part, and you all have the same values and core structures, which most people do. You don't want to murder people for no reason and rape and pillage and whatnot. If you have one or two jack-offs, pardon my French, in the group, then everybody is obviously going to just put them out, And
you would think
that's what the anarchy kind of thing goes, though. It's. I mean, I guess you could kind of still say that that's kind of getting into like democracy a little bit, or even maybe a little bit of a republic. But at the same time, I feel like those people just make decisions for themselves as a team, kind of democratic, I guess. But then they just push those one or two people out.
The fear is that it reduces to tribalism. Tribalism, we know, war more than stable societies.
Correct. That's what we're scared of when we hear anarchy.
So my argument is it's a force balance. You need Jefferson and you need Hamilton, both their perspectives at the same table, like it was when we first started.
Sure, that makes sense.
And sometimes
get a little 50-50.
Well, that's the thing though, is it's not 50-50 because it never is.
Yeah, well, I'm saying on both sides of the argument.
But what I'm saying is, it's sometimes it's 60-40 Hamilton, and then depending on the situation, sometimes it needs to be 60-40 Jefferson.
Yeah.
So and there should be a dance there.
Yep.
And what I think makes Washington the best president, and he's far enough back we can idolize him, but when I look at other presidents, he was facilitating the conversation. He was the quiet guy that said, look, you're both just being ridiculous. Here's a good common ground. Maybe we can find this.
Yeah.
And we don't have that anymore.
Yeah.
We have propaganda and counter-propaganda. And they're both saying, you did it first.
Yeah. Well, see, like you said, Hamilton helped erect the Federal Reserve, along with many other families, big elite families. Obviously, with the backing, you can't just do that one person. I think that was it 1913 that it got erected in America? The Federal Reserve? Was it 1914, 1912? It was early 1900s. I know that much. Very early.
So it's gone through a few different iterations.
Well, that's when it was erected here, though, right?
That was when it got the label Federal Reserve, I think.
Right, yeah, the Federal Reserve. And then, of course, that we had
Hamilton would have been long dead.
Right, yeah, that's true.
But it's his philosophies at the very least.
Right. Some type of central banking system.
Yeah.
But what I was going to say was, lo and behold, late 20s came around, and a lot of people say that the Great Depression happened because of how the Federal Reserve was enacted, along with how they wanted to tax people and things of that nature.
Yeah.
So I don't really believe in a federal tax. I believe in a state tax. I think you're going to have some taxes, otherwise you're not going to have roads and things like that. But I think that they tax us way too much.
I'm still a fair tax proponent.
Yeah.
But people hear that
fair
and
tax.
They hear flat tax.
Yeah.
And it's like, no, it's 24% on all what do they call it when it's food and water?
Bare essentials.
Yeah, whenever it's that,
yeah,
it's a 24% tax, and the reason for that is, as you do more, you need more.
I guess you'd call them.
Yeah, as you do more, you need more, so you'll purchase more. So your taxes are.
Oh yeah.
In
they're
direct correlation
where your money is.
Right, and
that's fair. And that's why they say the rich don't pay their fair taxes, because they damn well don't.
Right, and then there's the other element of illegals not
paying at all.
Right.
Exactly.
So this would capture both.
Yeah, and that's fair. Yeah, all right, I could see that.
But there's, we're oversimplifying, and this is just a surface thing. But there's a
why
lot
not,
into it. It's a good idea.
Why not oversimplify it at first, and then
the fact that we're not looking at it is what bothers me.
Yeah.
And that's kind of the fact. That's kind of coming back to the COVID thing. There are differing opinions.
Yeah.
I understand. Oh, what was his name? The model that we went with. There were really good reasons for it to have a 15% constant infection rate in the model, because you want to prepare for the worst.
Right.
The problem was, in practice, we didn't see that in any country.
Right.
It tapered off after the first 2 weeks.
Yeah.
So are we just pot committed?
Well, see, that's what I'm saying.
Now we need to adjust.
Or it could be something altogether
different. And now we don't
want
to eat that humble pie.
Yeah.
Is that it?
But it could be something completely different too. They could be using this to do something. Have you ever heard of the QAnon? We shouldn't get too far into this.
I do know QAnon.
But the whole QAnon theories about how Trump is going to be apparently arresting and holding tribunals and military tribunals for all these elite pedophiles and actor pedophiles and all these people. I've heard 1,000 different stories in a million different ways, but I do find that fascinating. And have you heard of the whole JFK's son theory?
No.
So that's QAnon
you gotta
too.
Tell me about
That's
this
QAnon
one.
too.
Is it really?
Yeah, oh yeah, that's brand new, like a couple months ago, I believe. So apparently, they're saying that JFK Jr. never died, and that Donald Trump has kept him hidden and safe for years and years and years. I'm about to blow your mind here in a second.
It's already blown.
Okay, so
just like JFK's.
So, anyways, they're saying that once all this crap goes off and everything comes to light, Trump tells the truth and shows you all these evil people and all these evil elitists and the swamp, apparently, and he's drained it finally. Well, and then he's going to show JFK Jr. to light, and apparently he's going to be the president, or he's going to want to possibly be the next president. God only knows. But then at the flip side, a lot of people think that's going to be like the Antichrist and things like that too. Somebody that everybody's going to gather behind, everybody can unite behind. He's not a crazy politician jerk, and he's not a celebrity like Trump,
No, he's magnetic.
He's magnetic to everybody. But here's the scary thing. What was Inauguration Day where Trump technically became president and Obama left into the helicopter? Do you remember what Melania Trump was wearing?
Was it the light blue?
The light blue.
The light blue that Jackie was wearing?
The Jackie O, was actually wearing. And here's the scariest thing. Do you remember the present that they gave? And I don't necessarily believe this theory. I think it has some interesting points. So Melania gave what's about Michelle Obama's a gift. And do you remember what that gift was?
No.
It was a blue box, Tiffany blue box, just like her Tiffany blue outfit, which just like Jackie O wore. But the blue box, JFK Jr., his ashes were in a light blue box, just like that.
So
Tiffany blue box.
So she's handing the box saying,
to Michelle
guess
Obama.
what?
And I don't know what the significance of that is really, and it could all just be, but the whole present thing was weird anyways. They don't gift presents like that usually. And I'm not saying
there's a mandatory gift.
Was there a mandatory?
It's part of the ceremony.
But I still find it fascinating that it was that Tiffany blue box and straight to Michelle Obama, because she didn't even know. She looked at it and you could see her face was like kind of like shocked, like it was weird, it was kind of scary, and I didn't know anything about it until like a couple months ago when I looked into this. But apparently that's like the whole deal, and it's just kind of scary. And there's a lot of other things too that I'm not bringing up or mentioning because I'm forgetting about them. But
the thing is too, and for somebody who doesn't know the story that I'm about to bring up, this is going to seem like a leap. This being a small token of a huge conspiratorial backstory. Except George W. Bush handed the Russians the tape of the funeral that they had in the 60s for the Russian crew that Project AZORIAN was commissioned to bring up from the depths of the Pacific. This is no, here's the thing. People are listening to me going, you've just got your own conspiracy theory. It's like, no. This is declassified. Howard Hughes was commissioned due to a global event. We were the only ones that had sonar triangulation at the time.
Like those weird UFO videos that were just declassified. Did you see those?
Yeah, and I've been listening to David Fravor for about... Honestly, I didn't fall into that hole until I saw Dan Aykroyd on Joe Rogan.
That's like a whole nother thing that we can talk about.
But I did, and it's great. And it's like, this guy's not making it up. He's just telling you what he saw.
Right.
He's like, I don't care if it's aliens or what. I just want to fly it. Can you get me one? I just want to fly it.
What is it?
Yeah. There's different takes too. I've got a guy, he's pretty well versed in the Book of Enoch, and we're going to talk about the Watchers and the Sons of God and the Sons of Men.
Yeah, the Watchers. Oh yeah.
All that's really cool stuff. But coming back, Project AZORIAN, real quick.
Yeah, sure.
Just to tie it up, and we can leave.
Yeah. Go ahead.
Howard Hughes was commissioned to go find what seemed to be a nuclear event.
Okay.
In the Pacific, not far from the coast of Hawaii. As a matter of fact, it was within missile range.
Interesting.
Of Hawaii, within the subnets. And they kept it secret. They denied it for decades. But they were talking back and forth with the Russians. The Russians would periodically ask, hey, what did you find out with?
That's pretty crazy.
We know you were out there because we were out there looking for it.
That's pretty crazy.
Right? And they were like, no, we weren't. And that's the thing that gets me. No,
and
we weren't.
And then he just handed them that.
And then you look at MK Ultra and you look at the other programs where they say, no, we didn't do that. And then you find out they were testing on, this is all declassified, testing on prisoners, testing on asylum patients at the time without their consent.
We already knew all that was happening anyways, really.
But people were being told this is not happening to
right,
you.
Of course, yeah. Government lies.
Whole towns being tested using mosquito trucks. No joke. Like, they're just playing around. And then they're saying, no, we're not doing that. And they deny it for 50 years. And then they say, yeah, we did that. We're sorry. But don't worry, we don't do that anymore.
Right, we don't do that anymore. That's what they're.
That's funny because if you look at the program before MK Ultra,
you guys are probably doing it right now.
they said it. They said it with the program before. They're like, yeah, Project Byrd, that was terrible.
Project Blue Beam too. I mean,
we don't do that anymore. MK Ultra started the next day.
Yeah,
it's just the same program, different name.
Exactly.
So don't tell me there's not stuff that we're being lied to about.
Exactly. Tons and tons of stuff.
And you can say it's for the greater good. You can say it's for our safety. You can say it's for the stability of the world.
Right.
The ends, for me, doesn't justify the means.
Right. Not even close. Not even remotely close. We're 100% lied to. And all I was just going to say real quick was just really simply that we were talking about the simplicities of it there. And we were just kind of discussing the Bible briefly there. I was just simply saying one thing I did forget to mention, rushing back very quickly, and then we'll keep going where we're moving forward, was a lot of the stories in the Bible, like the giants, for instance. Apparently there were real giants back then.
Yeah.
In fact, over the past couple hundred years, in newspapers, there's been, like, almost every couple months there was new giant bones found. Well, nowadays, the Smithsonian has been covering all that stuff up. You can't see any. I'm talking big, like 15, 20 feet tall. These are real bones that were actually found, human bones. And
I got to see this.
You got to check it out, man.
I've seen some allusions to it, but I haven't seen anything that I go...
Right, because there's a lot of fake stuff out there.
Because there's a lot of good Bigfoot footage.
This is way different.
Well, it might not be. If
maybe.
Because given the height estimates of Bigfoot, what if
these
he's
people,
just a
some
leftover
of these people
giant?
supposedly are like 40 feet tall.
Yeah,
some
but what
of
if
them.
those are just the little
like,
ones that we're
next
seeing?
Level.
Those are the kids.
And we're also talking about like there's apparently like big tall trees that reached up close to the heavens as well. Like the mountaintops that we think are flat
I've looked at that
mountains. Well, there's not just one. There's like hundreds. But we're going off on different roads now. But what I was going to say was just real quick, because there's so much to talk about, so much to unpack, so much, insane. But what I was going to say is there's so many different little stories in the Bible, like David and Goliath, the giants, or the Tower of Babel, King Nimrod, that tower going up there, even Noah and the floods, like where'd all that damn water come from? Hey, what if he opened up, all those stories kind of start making sense a little bit more, in my opinion. And also, I mean, just in general, those stories start making a lot more sense, because if you take the Bible literally now, it doesn't make a lot of sense. But if you take it on a flat plane along with the waters above, waters below, all other stuff, it really does start to make a lot more sense. King Nimrod could actually build a tower to the top of the firmament and possibly crack through it if he made a tower large enough. And they were talking about it being like hundreds of cubits by hundreds of cubits, which were, this thing was like 10 miles in circumference. I mean, stupid huge.
I wonder if that tree is actually the old foundation.
That's one thing. That's one theory. But I'm saying, like, a lot of these like mountains, you got to think of how dense and how strong these trees must have been, like stone probably, because a lot of people think they're just rocks, but they would have had to have been harder than rocks, or just as hard as rocks, to be that large and that tall to hold that amount of weight. Just, theories, but, it's still very interesting. Something to think about.
Well, and it tickles my curiosity, right? Because one of the things that I think we have a problem with in discussing current theory versus flat earth theory is the straw manning of each other. Right. And all it is an exaggeration of what we're doing day to day.
I just wish more people could talk like we're doing right now.
I think we need to do it by example. That's why we're doing it today. Is the idea is, hey, you know what? If the world starts seeing more people doing it, maybe they'll start trying it out.
Yeah, I mean, because flat earthers called globers or heliocentric model people globtards and all this other stuff, and then flat tards. I mean, it's just so childish.
Libtards. I mean, I've seen them all. It's just terrible.
It's silly. It's silly.
Yeah.
We are all adults. We are not. And if you have any type of argument at all, there's no reason why you should be calling people names.
The truth.
Because name calling is for people that are ignorant.
Truth doesn't need defense. If what you believe is true and irrefutable, then why argue it?
Right. Yeah, I agree with that.
No, I do see there's propaganda and you start twisting things. So you need to at least acknowledge objective truth. But this stuff, coming back to the Bible, the reason it makes sense, the Bible, if you're looking at old text and 500 years ago,
sure,
it's going to make sense. Yeah. Because the Bible there are many objective things in it that line up with objective scientific understanding
well,
that we know.
Of what they also believed in back in the day. And look, I'm not saying that either, but that does make sense too. But do you believe in the Bible?
Well, yeah.
Like,
the pork, the parasites in pork, right? There's a good reason for you to not have pork.
Yeah, right? And that's what the Bible says too. Yeah,
and
of course.
So, and to be able to explain that, there's a great line that Jesus talks about where he says, I talk to you about earthly things and you don't understand. How can I talk to you about heavenly things? It's the same idea. Mm-hmm. I'm going to tell you, just like a kid, don't eat that.
Right.
Because I can't explain to you that there's a parasite living in that's going to go into your brain and cause you to go a bit mad.
Yeah.
Right? I can't do that because you don't get what a parasite is.
Right.
So I got to step you up.
Right.
And one of the things that Scripture does too is that it's a phenomenological account. It's not an objective scientific account, because there was no objective scientific method then, as we understand it now. It paved the way for that, the discipline of carrying past stories without altering them. Mm-hmm. We know it was an oral tradition before it was a written tradition,
right?
And people don't realize like the lengths that priests had to go to in order to not alter. So if there was a typo, and this is as late as Dark Ages, if there's a typo in one line in the last chapter of the book, you have to scrap the whole thing.
You do.
They
King
had
James,
to.
The King James Bible. Mm-hmm. There was two brothers that were brought up to actually write that whole entire Bible, the King James Bible.
That's what the Levites are.
They were incarcerated and I believe killed publicly because King James found out. And the 10 Commandments, they actually twisted a couple of them. I don't know if they were trying to be funny or evil or what, but one of them, instead of it saying "thou shalt not kill," it said "thou shalt kill." And I'm talking like legitimate, like big typos. In fact, one of the biggest things is that they named Jesus with the J, and that was not ever supposed to be happening because the letter J didn't come out till like 400 or 500 years ago.
Yeah.
But they left that. Yeah, but they left Jesus in there, of course, which is why we call him Jesus now. When in fact, it's probably Yeshua or some name like that, which it doesn't really matter. Name, but
which to this day, Messianic Jews and Orthodox Jews. Well, Orthodox Jews don't really bother with it, so sorry, Ben Shapiro. But Messianic Jews, the ones that are following the traditions of Judaism but believe that Christ came along, they still, in the texts, they'll strike out the O in Lord. They usually drop a vowel because the name is so sacred and they have such high respect. It's the whole hallowed and hallowed be your name.
Yeah.
But they're using it in practice. I'm not going to use this for vanity. I'm not going to use this lightly.
Right.
So when they write it with the letters, it's
sense.
Huge.
Yeah.
It's like, no, this guy is like putting his soul out there. Like it's really cool.
Which is, I wonder why if
so
they
the level
like
of
some
reverence
of the old texts where when they would say like a biblical name like God or Yeshua or whatever, they would write the first letter so much larger. Yeah, you have caps lock, but come on. This is capital letters, but this is like 10 times bigger than that capital letter.
Yep.
And they're just trying to give it the most high.
Yes, the absolute reverence it should carry was the idea. And so when you've got a society that is that knit, saying, look, you can't have a typo or you scrap the whole scroll or book or whatever, it's going to self-regulate. Now, the argument is that a bunch of guys got together and wrote a fictional story called the Bible. It's like, okay, well, maybe. It's a story. That's a theory I'm still really working on.
Yeah, there's a whole theory that entire book was made for control.
Right, but
at the same time, though,
there's
what
too
do
much
we
going
really
on
know? There's too much going on. It's extremely elaborate. And again, there's a lot of things that actually do make sense in the Bible when you put it into layman's terms.
Yeah, well, and that's where I was going with phenomenological. As I perceive the world, like you and I, we don't, for what we do day to day, there are some technologies that exist that require the Earth to be globe-shaped for it to work. Talking about signals, line of sight, things like that. And satellite orbits, all that good stuff.
Yeah, I don't believe in satellites either.
I know. So it's like, right. That's another rabbit.
It's like
it's another rabbit trail.
Cold, yeah, it's another rabbit trail.
Another rabbit trail. But if technology works, because I work in IT,
sure.
If it works the way I understand it to work, then it has to work in a certain
if you format. The way you understand it to work.
The way I understand it to work.
Correct.
And the way the technology is being built, is dependent on it. Just like we have to believe that quantum mechanics exists because we're making wires so small on processors now that if quantum mechanics didn't work the way we know them to work, the electrical signal would end up on the wrong side of the wire.
Yeah, and I can see that in definitely some aspects.
Yeah.
But I think a lot of the cables, we have like hundreds of thousands of miles of undersea cables that really give us most of our internet. And then we do also have big cell towers. They're trying to go to 5G now. Also, that's another thing we can talk about.
That's a great conspiracy theory that I don't know much about.
I don't know a ton about it, but I've seen a lot about it, and I don't really know how much grounding there is on that. I have heard quite a few things about how the radio waves actually, it's so much stronger than 4G than it actually was that like 60 gigahertz or something like that. It actually
I don't know the specs
vibrates
yet. It's moving still. We're trying to get it
cellular the water in your cells, and that's what causes that so much, like you can throw up and get sick and cancer and God only knows what else. So
we know this to be true because you can do ULF crowd control. Are you familiar with this?
Yes, yeah, the whole world.
You take a focused beam of low frequency, lower than my voice, all the way down, lower than that, to where you can't hear it.
I don't have a low
You can't
voice,
actually hear it. That's how we can actually predict that there are earthquakes coming.
Yeah.
That's
interesting.
The ultra low frequency hits before the movement and the shifting of the tectonic plates hit.
Sure. That's pretty neat.
Yeah.
I didn't know that.
We figured it out where these things exist for one, and then we started channeling them at things, and you can make people sick to their stomach by hitting them with a beam of ULF.
Interesting.
But you really can actually get and it's non-violent,
too, can't you? If there's a earthquake that's about to happen, you feel kind of sick.
If
to your
you're
stomach.
sensitive to low frequency things, so it makes a good case for us
movie,
being based. Phenomenon, yeah, very good. Yes, John Travolta, Kevin Bacon's wife, whatever her name is, and Forrest Whitaker.
Is that his wife? I didn't
for
know
a long time. I don't know if she's still.
That's
you know how Hollywood marriages are.
That's true.
But and Forrest Whitaker. That was the first time I had seen Forrest Whitaker. I love that movie.
Good old Forrest.
Yeah. The Forrest Whitaker.
NyQuil DayQuil guy.
Yeah. Yes. NyQuil DayQuil. Yes. He's great though.
He is great.
So ULF does. Yeah. If you're sensitive to it, so what that does is it establishes that our bodies are operating on frequencies. Mm-hmm. We don't know to the extent of that.
Sure. We're built.
I've heard.
We are built. You want to talk about quantum mechanics? I think God, the person the being that created us, is on a whole nother level of quantum physics.
Well, and the biggest thing, and this is what I'm getting to, is he spoke the universe into existence. So what if it's not matter that matters, it's sound?
Yeah. Oh, wow. Yeah, there you go. There you
go.
That's
where I'm kind of going.
That's a great theory.
We're messing with a lot of frequencies.
And what if his frequency and his voice alone has the capacity to create certain life and certain things? See, like, I didn't really think about that. Well, that could be an answer to itself of what is the meaning of life? How did life get created? Because you got all the Big Bang Theory, which I definitely don't believe that, but that actually makes sense.
I think it looks like that from an observation side.
Sound waves, man, there's so much, to be said about that. I know that for a fact.
Why do you feel depressed when you hear a sad song?
Correct. Yeah.
Right? Is it because your brain's interpreting a conditioned response?
It's bringing you into a feeling.
Yeah, because when it's really good music, people
good for what your mind think it is.
Well, no, I mean really good as far as like people talk about saying I had a religious experience.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. And it's different for everybody, though.
It's speaking to the soul. Well, how does it speak to the soul?
Right.
It's sound waves.
What is the soul?
Well, then maybe the soul's made up of some kind of sound inspired material.
And then you can start talking about the pineal gland that's in your brain, and how a lot of people think that the people that run this world are constantly trying to poison us with certain foods and things that may not just kill us immediately, but are very good about calcifying that pineal gland so that we are not grounded with anything, and we can't really think for ourselves as well. We don't, it's hard for us to deal with our emotions correctly.
Why is fluoride in the water?
Why is fluoride in the water? We know for a fact that that's not good. You know what I mean? It doesn't, it's not good for your teeth either. So it's, it
is in a dose, in an intense dose right.
You don't use
like at the dentist.
You don't want to ingest it.
And you don't want to ingest it a lot over time.
Exactly.
So
over time, exactly.
Right. And that's
what really will get you.
Yeah.
And that's what a lot of the stuff that they put into us with the metals and things like that, that's what will cause our bodies to have problems over time.
Well, so one of the things about Alzheimer's is that they've seen that the coating of the brain, because it gets gets like a calcium
Sure.
membrane. It's on the membrane.
It's like I know what you're talking about. It's like
and
a little weird
buildup.
film.
Yeah, it's a buildup on all the circuits.
Sure.
And it's comprised of aluminum, among other things.
Yeah, I wouldn't doubt that at all. Yep.
Do you know what we put on our body every day that has aluminum in it?
Deodorant. Yeah. Underneath your armpits. That's why my wife and I, we use total organic, non-aluminum.
Got you.
Yep.
Yeah, I mean, I still use antiperspirant, which
so
is what
good that
it's
you know
specifically
that too,
in
man. It makes me happy that you know that stuff, man.
Thanks.
Like, I mean, I know you're a really smart guy and everything, and I'm really happy that you're seeing so far into a lot of this stuff, because this is where you need to be in order to really truly think for yourself. I mean, you gotta just know it all.
Well, so this is where you and I have a lot of fun on Facebook too. If I poke at you for a typo or something like that,
yes,
I'm not trying to poke at you saying you're wrong.
I know.
I'm saying let's get together and make your argument better.
Yeah.
Let's dive in.
Dude, another problem with me,
I love doing that with you. I love doing that with you.
I will be in my car. It shouldn't be texting and driving, and I will not all the time, but every once in a while
respond.
I will text, and then I won't really read it, and then I'll just hit post like a dummy. And then every once in a while I'll have a typo, and I'm like, oh great, damn it.
Yep, typos, and then.
But it does make your argument look worse, though. Unfortunately,
if you're talking about feet versus miles, I mean that's a big difference.
Exactly,
it's literally miles of difference.
You're right.
Yeah, and
because something will pop into my head though, and I'm like, I gotta say this right now, and then.
But rather than tearing you apart, and this is where I'm talking about civil discourse.
Sure.
I didn't tear you apart for saying 3,000 feet.
Yeah, of course.
Is ridiculous. I knew what you meant.
Right.
And I articulated it and helped you make your argument, make your case. If we're building each other up and encouraging each other in an honest pursuit of truth,
right,
I think that's a great example of how one day we'll find out how we're both wrong.
And how we can, and that's something completely different, or God only knows.
Yeah.
But we're just trying to find it in a pursuit of where we need to be and what we are.
Yeah.
But you know what's funny though, man, is like when I first started touting all the, we can talk about Freemasons too, because I've heard a lot about bad things about Freemasons too. Yeah. But that's for another time. But
you need to watch 2 episodes ago, because we actually talked about it a bit.
The Freemason stuff?
I distracted and talked about Ghostbusters more than the subject that we had in mind.
No worries, man.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, so what I was gonna say was, and golly jeepers, what were we just talking about?
This is what I do. Yeah. But Freemasons, and then before Freemasons, we were talking about pursuing truth at a level of detail. When you first started pursuing,
yes,
yep,
when
I
first
knew you
started,
back then.
Thank you, partner. Mm-hmm. So about a year ago, actually about 2 years now, actually, when I started I came out of the closet as a flat earther.
Yeah, I remember.
Big step, okay?
Huge.
You're going to get crucified at first. Everyone's going to call you a moron. Eventually, it all dies down because either one, people stop trying to argue with you, or two, you learn, and that's another reason why I decided to learn so much about the whole theory of flat Earth, is because I did not want to be embarrassed all that much. I wanted to make sure I had some type of argument that I can talk about. Otherwise, I am going to look like an idiot. Even though I've seen certain things for myself, and I've witnessed certain things for myself that I cannot retract, so that's why I believe them. But I still need to watch these things 1.5 million times over so I can truly retain it, and I can speak to my argument, which is any person, instead of calling names, you need to learn how to speak to your arguments. But what I was going to say was, you are one of the very few people still left that can really have any inclination to an argument with me.
Thank you.
Everybody else they can't argue with me anymore, because they're not as advanced as you are in how thorough you've investigated things is really what it comes down to.
Yeah, there's also a level of, I love doing it.
Me too.
I love digging in.
I'm fascinated with it.
And one of the things that I think comes with straw manning is, there's also just, how much time am I willing to spend on this?
Yeah, you gotta.
If I think you're being ridiculous, how much time
not a lot.
How much time that's missing the point.
Right.
The point is, Rob Duff is a beautiful human being created by God with a spark of divinity of his own, just like me.
That's right.
And that's the point, just like me.
Yeah.
How much time would I wish somebody would give me? How much would I want to be heard by just somebody else?
Yeah.
Like honestly heard.
Sure.
That's the point.
Yeah.
One of the reasons I think flat earthers get away with a lot, because there's a lot of low res flat earthers. You're not one of them, which is great.
Right.
Low res flat earthers will think about 3 layers deep.
Mm-hmm. Right.
And usually they can talk about those 3 layers and then subject change enough
to
where
pivot,
to where scientifically minded people just throw their hands up. They're like, this is just a never-ending
Yeah, they start saying
discussion.
globetards a lot.
And it's like, what if you stop trying to push your idea that it's a global Earth? What if you just start listening to somebody?
That's it. And vice versa, too.
Because at the end of the day, like we were talking about, it doesn't actually affect. As far as I'm concerned, from here to the store at the corner is flat.
Yeah.
I move in the world as if it is flat.
Yeah, stationary.
I perceive the world as if it is a dome.
Yeah, we're stationary. Well, also that we're stationary. There's no movement from what we can tell.
Right.
But
and
that's
so day to day, what really matters, and this is where coming back to what Christ said, he didn't say the greatest commandment was to go figure out the mysteries of the universe.
Correct.
Love one another as I have loved you.
Wow. Yep.
And if it's Christ, if he is the person that he claimed to be, he is the architect of all of this.
Yeah.
And we are all being idiotically absurd anytime we try to speak from a point of intelligence on it.
Yes.
And he still listened.
Yeah. He's still listening.
He's still listening.
Still listening.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
Right?
I agree, man.
That's what we got to aim at.
I agree, man. And just treat everybody with respect and just try to learn from each other, And I'm not going to say that, I'm like some Boy Scout or anything like that, because I've definitely said my share of, like, I'll see something online that I find absolutely absurd and I'll be like, what the hell's your problem, blah blah blah. But I actively try to do that less and less, I should say.
Well, that's sanctification. That's the difference between what I think somebody who's a fire insurance Christian, as I've heard it called.
They
give the confession.
Do what they got to do. Go to church every week. Yeah, make sure we're going to get there.
Yeah.
Just in
case. What we're called to do is to follow him and be more like him every day, which is sanctification. That is a conscious, every day, every hour of every day, I have to decide, am I going to do it my way or am I going to do it his way?
Yeah.
And I'm going to mess up.
And I feel like the more that you truly try to go down his path, not your path, and just understand the things that happen in your life and what's happening in your life, just don't try to control them as much as you do the best you can, obviously, but just kind of understand that that's just his path for you. Just keep doing what you're doing. And once you just kind of, I guess, forfeit yourself to that, you start becoming happier. You start becoming less self-absorbed. Your ego kind of falls away a little bit. You become more of a human being, if you will. And you just become happier, and he starts blessing you more.
And the world gets better around you.
The world gets better around you. Yes.
Even if you're with a bunch of people that don't believe that.
Right.
Your existence, the way you're brightening things up.
It doesn't matter what they're thinking and saying.
Helps them be in a place where they can make a less wrong decision.
Yeah.
And it's a beautiful ripple effect.
That's true.
Yeah.
It's true. Good talk.
Yeah, 2 theories, landing on a truth.
Yeah.
I can't find a better way to button this up.
Yeah, I was about to say it's a good one right here.
This has been great.
Yeah,
we should do it again.
We should.
Yeah, and you're not far from me, so we can do this.
No, not too far away.
Yeah, we should definitely do this again. Maybe we'll dive into some of the more details that we didn't get to go to, like Van Allen and heat transfer, because that's my answer to the thermosphere is heat transfer, particles coming into contact long enough to transfer
and I kind of, honestly,
great.
I kind of winged this today. I didn't know how detailed things were going to go, but I didn't study up or anything like that. But what I'll say is next time we have a session, we'll talk 2 weeks in advance, and whatever topic we're going to be talking about, I actually try to brush up a little bit too, so I actually have a little bit more thorough things to say, which, I think people get the point, but I want to be extremely thorough too. So.
Well, I told you I brushed up, but what happened was I set this setup at I got done around 1:30 last night.
Oh, gosh.
And then I was late, I need to refresh my memory.
It's funny you say that. I mean, I'm not going to lie to anybody. The only refreshing that I got was this morning. I watched my 21 questions just so I could kind of touch. Wait, how many questions do people ask again? And so I did that real quick, or as fast as I could. I only got like 20 minutes in. And then I also watched the first 15 minutes of my favorite one to watch, which is because it's so thorough. It's 3.5 hours long, of Eric Dubay. If you guys don't know who Eric Dubay is, he Dubay, I believe is how you.
Looks like Dubay.
Dubay, yep. Mm-hmm. So Eric, that's how he spells his name. But anyways, that guy is a genius, exceptionally well spoken. He is probably one of the original, if not the OG original, younger guy too, kind of like in his late 30s, early 40s like us, but just a bookworm. And he's the one that took into that Zetetic.
I can't pronounce it. I know what you're talking about. It's a word I hadn't run across until last.
And he just kept reading into it, and that's where he came up with the whole flat Earth stuff. Then he started looking into our old history, looking into our old books, looking into all this older stuff, and that's where he's come to his conclusions. But he's the one that re-sparked the flat Earth back in like 2012, 2013, I think. But there's been people for centuries that still believed in flat Earth, and also believed in the old ways, but they don't have YouTube channels. They didn't really talk about it, so it's 1%. But that's why flat Earth has a 99% retention rate too. So once you truly resolve yourself and you see it, eventually you just kind of over months and months of research, eventually you just kind of accept it, and you're like, oh my gosh, I guess that's me.
I'm gonna end on a landmine here.
Yeah.
The reason we're starting to question like we are is because we've been lied to, and we know we've been lied to by established authority.
Yep.
This is why, whether it's for good or not, don't lie.
Yes.
Not even a little bit.
Yeah.
Tell the people the truth. Move in truth, because once they question you on the advanced things, they'll start questioning you at the very basic understandings of society.
And everything starts breaking apart.
And then it falls apart. It's not the flat earthers' fault that it fell apart. It's your lies that did it.
Yeah. It's true.
We'll see you next time.
That's true.